He said, my name is Destiny Ogedegbe, graduate from University of Benin, and I'm a corporate attorney with Banwa and Ighodalo, just like me. Of course, you can see that I didn't mention Harvard when I introduced myself. So as much as I'm a co-host, I'm also a participant in this particular program. I want to learn. I'm coming from the participant's perspective here. So I have a lot of expectations. I have questions, and I know that the amazing set of panelists will be doing justice to pretty much everything I have, or pretty much everything I've imagined will be spoken of in this particular program. So I thank the panelists for joining. I thank everybody joining. Without much ado, we would commence with the program. We are very keen on time for the sake of everybody. Thank you so much for joining once again.
Thank you, Destiny. That was a good one.
Sorry,
Destiny.
because just to confirm, can everybody hear us clearly?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. We just want to introduce our panelists very briefly. We'll start with Tochi. Tochi, please introduce yourself very briefly. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Tochukwu Chikwendu. I obtained my. I'm getting some feedback. Can we go on mute, please? I'm getting some feedback. Okay, so I obtained the group transaction counsel at Atlas Mara. Atlas Mara is an investment firm listed on the London Stock Exchange, and we have investments in about 7 countries in Africa. I obtained my degree from the University of Benin in 2010, and I proceeded to obtain my master's from New York University School of Law, where I majored in finance, securities law, and capital markets. That's pretty much about me. Thank you.
Thank you, Tochi. Tola, please, can you do us the honors?
All right, thank you, Mavis. My name is Adetola Adele. I'm currently the head legal and company secretary for First Ally Capital Limited, and I'm responsible for providing legal governance, company secretarial, and compliance oversight for all the entities in the First Ally Group. I hold an LLB, my first degree from Obafemi Awolowo University in 2011. Thereafter, I went to the Nigerian Law School, worked with the law firm of Jackson and Edu, and I went to the University of Pennsylvania Law School in the United States in 2015 through 2016 for my master's degree. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Tola. Omoleye.
Hello, everyone. My name is Omoleye. I went to the University of Lagos where I obtained my LLB degree. I was called to the Nigerian bar in 2014. After my law school, I worked with Banwa and Ighodalo for about 3 years, then went for my master's in Oxford, where I did an MSc in law and finance. After my master's, I also worked with Banwa and Ighodalo. I've been a corporate lawyer most of my practice days, and I advise in M&A, corporate finance, and I'm also a chartered secretary, so I have experience in rendering company secretarial services and legal advisory. I'm currently undertaking qualification here in England and Wales to be a solicitor, and I also volunteer for a non-profit in London.
Thank you, Omoleye. Ilyas, please.
Okay.
Hello, Ilyas.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Ilyas Kazim. I'm currently a PhD student in the University of Aberdeen, and I'm combining that with being a partner in the law firm of Sholias LP in Lagos. I'm just working virtually at the moment while I'm in University of Aberdeen. I worked in Banwa and Ighodalo for some close to 5 years. I attended Nigerian Law School and was called in 2014. And that was after I got my LLB from University of Ilorin in Nigeria.
Thank you, Ilyas. Uche, please. Hi, Uche. Okay, I think Uche might be having some network issues. Victor, can you please introduce yourself? whilst we wait for Uche.
Sure. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so maybe my name is Victor. Uh, I used to work at Bawan Godalo so a couple of months ago, and I was qualified as a Nigerian lawyer in 2017. Currently pursuing my master's at Harvard, and I think my focus is really on, say, an intersection between financial regulations and public international law. Maybe specifically, I should just add that I'm really looking at sovereign debts. Thank you for the platform. I look forward to speaking to everyone.
Thank you, Victor. Uche now. Uche, are you back on? Okay, I think we lost Uche for a bit. She will join us. In the meantime, we'll continue with the program. We just want to say that because we know that the program is going to be a little bit intense, we decided to divide it into different phases. As we progress, you will see that the phases are very clear. So Destiny is going to kick off the first phase. Destiny, can you just start?
Okay, thank you very much, Mavis. Thank you to the panelists. Thanks for the honor of your introductions. I think I would start with Victor. He was the last person that just spoke. You will be taking this question first, but of course, this question is thrown to all the panelists. Very briefly, I want you to walk us through the application process. How long did it take? How many schools did you apply to? How did you eventually become, a student of Harvard LLM program? This goes to all the panelists as well. But Victor, I would like you to kick first.
Thanks, Destiny. So that's an interesting question. The duration of my application was, I have to say, I began to apply, or I began to prepare my application since May of the year I applied. That was 2019. And I would eventually submit those applications between September and December. So in terms of duration, I've been preparing for about 7-8 months for the application. In terms of what school, I think I'm receiving a feedback. Is there anyone who's unmuted? So in terms of what schools I applied for, or why I applied for school,
Sorry, Victor. I'm so sorry. Just for because of the feedback, Mavis, you would want to mute the hardware device in the room whilst other panelists are talking. Thank you.
Thank you. I did that already. Thank you.
Thanks. Yeah.
Okay, so if I may proceed. So in terms of the number of schools I applied to 7 schools, and I really spread out my options because I had different considerations in mind when applying. And is that a third question, or those were just 2 questions? I think you're muted.
Yeah, other than the duration and the number of schools, I would like you to just a brief summary what the process was like. Was it arduous? Was it very smooth? Depending on how many plans you have made, stuff like that.
Okay, so I've been told that I'm not very audible, so I'm going to try to project. Please let me know if I'm speaking very clearly. So I wouldn't say it was an easy process, and that was particularly because of the nature of schools I was applying to, and given my own background, and the fact that I was essentially making a transition, and so I had to convince the admissions office that I was worth the transition I was trying to make. So in that sense, what I'd done was first to Google the top LLM programs for public international law, because that was what I was trying to focus on. And then from there, I worked my way down through what schools had the best scholarship packages and what schools had the strongest international law programs. And then I think in terms of what I did specifically after figuring out what I wanted to apply to, and there was a point of contacting referees, getting transcripts, which I think is probably the most difficult aspect of the application process, and writing my personal statement, which really took me about 7 months to write, quite frankly, because I wrote them in piecemeal, or I wrote it in piecemeal. And there was also part of me that had to consult with different other people. So in order not to beat too much into the details, that was probably the linear sketch of how I went through the process.
Okay, thank you very much, Victor. I think I'll move on to the next panel. That was very insightful. Elias, could you please walk us through how your application process went, number of schools you applied to, and what the duration was like?
Oh, okay, thank you very much. The total number of schools I did was 4. So I started my application sometimes in 2016, and then I applied to Manitoba in Canada. I got an admission. I didn't attend that. And then in 2019, I did 3 applications. That's Cambridge, Queen Mary, and University of Aberdeen. I would say that my application process took average of like 4 to 5 month period. Like Victor said, there was always different consideration in making each application. I was in Banwan Godalo as an associate in litigation and arbitration, and all I've done within that period was litigation and commercial arbitration. So I was interested in something that might be close to that, maybe something along the line of arbitration or just general commercial law, right? So on each occasion, I tried to look for the school that could give me the best I wanted on that. So that's why I was considering different schools. So I think that average of 3 months on each occasion, and that included writing personal statements, chasing references, and also finalizing the applications. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. That was great. Uche, could you please help us with an answer for the same question? What was your process like?
And you should also please just introduce yourself because you missed that part. You need to unmute yourself, Uche.
Hi everyone. Sorry for the network interference I had. So my name is Uche Anichebe. I'm a graduate of Nnamdi Azikiwe University, and upon my graduation, I proceeded to Banwani Godalo, where I worked for about 5 years before then going to or proceeding to the Osgoode Hall Law School for my graduate studies. That's in York University, Canada. So I essentially, what my major preoccupation now is studying for my bar exams, which I should be done pretty soon. And I've also currently secured an article in placement with the Ministry of the Attorney General in Ontario, where I should start work by August. So with respect to my application process, mine is a bit similar with Ilias because I started pretty early, I think in about the year 2017, I applied to a total of about 3 schools. I remember Manitoba, Ottawa, and then the Osgoode Hall Law School, York University. And one of the most arduous or most difficult thing about my application to the Osgoode Hall Law School was we're required to write an essay, a very elaborate essay, which would be used in judging or appraising your suitability for the program. That's international business law. So like I had to think through it. I remember having to discuss with a number of partners, about 2 partners in my law firm at the time. And I also remember writing the article and giving it to a couple of people to help me review. I also think that I recall that one of the most challenging issues I faced was also getting my previous lecturers to issue the references on time, because like the application period, the application opening was very short. But in all of it, I think that the application for the schools I applied to took me about 5 to 6 months in all. That's from the first application to the very last when the application decision was made. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Uche. It appears you were very specific to Canada. The 3 schools you applied to in 2017, you all mentioned schools in Canada, but we'll get there anyway. I think I'll run through the other panelists for this question.
Okay.
Adetola, please, could you help us with an answer for the same question? What was your application process? What was the duration? How many schools did you apply to?
Can you hear me? All right. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the same question. So I applied to 5 schools. I applied to UPenn. Okay, before I list the schools I applied to, I started the process in 2014, late 2014. And I just basically applied to the schools in the United States. Harvard Law School, of course. I applied to Columbia, Cardozo, University of Pennsylvania Law School, and of course, Columbia Law School. Like all the other panelists mentioned, the process began immediately, getting your references out, getting the template, the transcript rather, and working on my personal statement. So getting all those things, as you know, can be daunting depending on the school you are dealing with and maybe the relationship you have with your lecturer. So that started, and going into those 5 schools, it was something that I had to plan very well and plan in such a way that there is time for me to go through the application process very well and it is not rushed at all.
Thank you very much. That was very succinct. I think we have Leah.
Hi.
Can you hear?
Yes, I can.
Please walk us through the application process, the duration and how many schools you applied to.
For me, I started my application in 2016 against 2017 admission. So I only applied during an admission cycle. I really wanted to do a master's in the UK. And after I figured out what my interest was and the course I wanted to do, which was in Oxford, maybe this is encouraging to anyone, but I actually only applied to Oxford in the UK. But then while I was walking through my application for Oxford, then a friend actually advised me to also try out for some US schools because sometimes they had better funding opportunities. I did, and I applied to Columbia then at NYU, and I got into NYU. I didn't get the Columbia admission, but my major reason there for applying for the US was for the funding, and in any case, NYU didn't offer me the admission, so I was quick to abandon that and then just focused my energy on Oxford. And the Oxford admission came out later because the UK usually had a later timeline in terms of deadline to the US universities. For my timeline, Oxford admission closed in January, and I started sometime in September. I started with the documentation that were not in my control, which meant that by September, I already had my transcripts applied for Unilag, that's my university then, and tried to also get this English waiver letter I needed then. And then I know that my references didn't come in until November. So it means I was chasing my lecturers between September and November when I started my application to get them to write me a reference and have that uploaded already on my portal. But for my own part, in terms of writing the application essays I needed to for my admission, then I would say I did that like the whole of December period, because I took like a 2 weeks leave during Christmas break and I used the opportunity to write my essays. And I know that Oxford did not close until like 3rd week in January. So for my essays, I would say I had a duration of about 7 weeks to put that together. And then I submitted and the admission came in sometime around March of the year I got in. Thank you.
Thank you, Omale. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Victor, Adesola, Uche. Thank you so much. Thank you, Elias. Tochiko, I want to ask you same question, but I felt like every panelist has spoken about it. What we hear them say is that they were specific. They didn't just put all their eggs in one basket. It was time consuming. It was intentional on their part. And I'm hoping that the participants are taking notes of the specific experience that they've shared, So what I would take away from this segment, for instance, is that it's not a walk in the park. It's something that you have to be deliberate about. It's something that you have to think through. It's not going to be like a one-off. It's not going to be like a 1 month or a 2 week stay. You have to go through the process. You heard what Ilya said, you heard Uche, and then you heard Leye, who was even more specific. And you also heard Tola say, oh, she applied to 5 schools. And you'd be wondering, 5 schools, And you also heard what Victor said. So Tochiko, I just want you to help us. I'm sure your process was about the same thing. But so I'll ask you, is graduate school actually important? I'm a practicing corporate associate. You are also, a practicing corporate attorney, though you are in a private equity firm. And my question is graduate school important? And has it helped you in any way? Or do you think that graduate school is going to help any of these participants? Can you just help us shed light on that?
Okay, thank you, Mavis. And just to mention that actually I only applied to NYU, and mine is quite unusual. I knew what I wanted and I focused my attention on it. And another very unusual thing about my application is that I made my application just a few days before the application ended, because maybe I'm quite lazy with issues like that, but I don't advise anyone to do that. But the takeaway is that you can actually apply to one school and still get into that school outside applying to several other schools. And to the question, whether graduate school is important, absolutely, graduate school is important because it helps boost your career, right? And also it gives you a different worldview of how things are done. So being in Nigeria, I always advise everyone that I have the opportunity of speaking to that it's always good to travel for your master's. It's really not about whether you want to live abroad or get a job abroad, but it's the world outlook. You get to meet people from different backgrounds. You expand your network in case you need anything, because law, as we know, even every other profession, you might need to reach out to people for advice. And it's interesting that there's no city in the world that I want to go to now that I don't have someone I can reach out to say, please, I'm coming to your city. What's the fun thing to do in your city? And that is because of the network I made while I was at NYU, because as we know, New York is a very diverse city, and there's different people from different walks of life, from diverse cultures and all. So to the question, graduate school is very important. It helps in your career. It helps you to meet different people from different walks of life. It helps in a whole lot of ways that you can't even imagine. And people say, why do you have to travel abroad? Is it that you want to show that you've lived abroad? But no, that's not the case. The point is that you get to meet a lot of people, you expand your network, and it will help you after school, when you want to look at the next career path, you have better chances that people that just schooled in Nigeria or people that have not gone to grad school. Thank you.
Thank you, Tochukwu. Thank you so much. Thank you for letting us know that you took the risk of applying to law school. I'll strongly advise against that. I have my reason. I didn't even apply to one school anyway. But if you want to be like Tochukwu, please feel free, but don't come and give me gist later. Leah, I want to ask you the same question, but also, while you are answering the question whether graduate school is important, I want you to tell me what stood you out as an applicant, what you think. Of course, you can only attempt. You're not a member of the admissions committee. You don't know what their criteria are, but what do you think stood you out? And how has graduate school, being a graduate of Oxford, helped you since graduation? I think you graduated about 3 years ago or so, 3-4 years ago. So how has it helped you? How important it is, and what stood you out?
Okay, thank you, Mavis. That's an interesting set of questions. I would need to, in case I didn't answer any, just please point me to that. The first question was, do I think graduate school is important? Yes, I think it is. I mean, it's not a gateway to everything you probably hope for in life. It's just the same way. You don't need to be educated to be a billionaire, for example, but it's one of those things you do and you hope for the very best of it. And I think it's very, very important. Tochukwu has talked about the importance of network. I think it gives you the network, and beyond the network, I think it gives you an exposure as well, being away from home, meeting other people, being in another environment that you've been used to, especially if you were born and maybe raised in Nigeria. I think it gives you an exposure to life generally. You get to meet people and you travel out. And then for the question on, you asked a question about, please just remind me.
How has your Oxford degree helped you in the last 6 years? Yes. How has it helped you in the last 3 years or 4 years?
Yeah, I finished from Oxford about two years and some months ago. I went to Oxford in 2017-2018. How has Oxford helped me? Oxford has helped me beyond just my course. I happened to do a course that was an MS in Law and Finance. So and I majored in finance major. So I had a lot of course to do with the MBA students. So for me, first of all, it was an opportunity to have like a mini MBA and benefit from the opportunities of being in the side business school and also being a member of the Faculty of Law. And Oxford also helped me to look beyond my current immediate plans. It's like you have a bigger picture. It won't be very clear, but then you are equipped for that bigger picture in life, and you'll be able to do some of the things you hope to do. And you have connections with some of the very big minds in the whatever sector you choose. If you go to a top school, your lecturers, the practitioners that are in that city are a good connection to. Because of Oxford, I was able to meet people in law firms here in London, and it was one of the ways I was able to know about an internship then that I worked for after my master's. And also it has, now that I'm still living in London, it has also helped me with my connection and meeting more people and being able to, for example, the nonprofit that I work for now is based on some of the connections that I've met through a lecturer with a practitioner. And it's network. In Nigeria, we like to say is who know who, but the truth is that that's how it works everywhere in the world. It's all about the network. It's all about people you know. Sometimes your next job is based on the person that you know or the person that you know that knows somebody, because at the end of the day, almost everybody's qualified, right? Everybody has the nice profile. Sometimes it's just your network that helps you with that extra peg to get that job on that next dream that you want. And then you also asked me a question of why did I pick my program?
Yeah, Leia, I think that is fine. You've done enough justice to it. I think it's what I take away from it is eventually, if you want to relocate, it helps you have a soft land. When you're relocating, having a graduate program kind of like helps with soft landing. Gives you the connection and the opportunity. Tola,
It looks like a jackpot scheme.
Tola, what do you think?
All right, so thank you, Mavis, and thank you, Leia. Okay, right on the point that Leia stopped, she spoke about network and also exposure. And in terms of maybe giving you opportunity, I think I can give myself as an example. So my current job, good enough, I have the degree, I have the exposure, I have the experience. But while the chairman of the board while I was having that final stage interview, he went through my resume, and when he saw University of Pennsylvania Law School, he just stopped. And I can tell you that for me, I felt like that was when I got the job, because the conversation then moved from, oh, you're a lawyer, you have this experience and all that. And he started talking about Wharton Business School. And for the next 30 minutes, we just started talking about Philadelphia, all the streets in Philadelphia. And then the interview actually moved from interview to a chat. So it kind of gives you an edge if you're applying for a job, and it puts you in a familiar terrain. And for this person I was actually interviewing with, he actually went to Wharton Business School. So you can imagine the kind of conversation we were having. It was no longer an interview, he moved on to a chat. So yes, network, exposure, and probably an edge.
Well, thank you so much. Destiny has some more questions for the other panelists. Destiny, please.
Yes, thank you very much for that. I'm just here learning like all the other panelists. When I would also get into one room and say, oh, I went to Harvard, and they would say, you got the job. Well, so I'm just going to ask, let's go down memory lane a little bit. As undergraduates, what undergraduate study or what set of undergraduate activities actually helped you in this process? I'll be throwing this question to Victor. First, Victor, I'll be throwing this question to Tochukwu. But Victor, please just help us. What specific undergraduate studies activities did you engage in that you feel helped you, stood you out in this entire process?
Okay, thanks, Bethany. And I had a feeling you were coming to me first. Well, I mean, first of all, I guess my story is a little different because I'd always known for sure that I wanted to be a lawyer that was representing countries and not individuals. And so that colored all of my activities in the university. So I was very particular about the Jessup competition, first of all. And that was, and I guess the first time I heard that people could travel out of the country to represent, to do a moot, I was intrigued because I mean I was always interested in global stuff. And then when I heard that it was about international law and this was a law that regulated states, then I was even more intrigued. And so I would eventually go for that competition in 2016. And then I guess that was one of the most focal things that I could put forward in my application to convince the committee I imagine that I was really interested in international law. And I also ensured that almost all of my writings and my speaking engagements, I was quite specific as to write on international legal issues and to attend conferences and speak at conferences that had to do with international law. So that everything about my profile, like I would tell anyone, the only thing that is not international law about my resume is BNI. So it was that targeted so that I had everything going towards that direction. And also been involved in mooting. I think I already mentioned that, and I was involved in the courts, in the moot courts. And I don't know that there's any more things in the undergraduate program that I probably did more than that. And I think I have to add that grades are very important. And if I knew better, I would have maybe put more effort towards my grades than I did eventually. But I mean, I learned that maybe my fourth year. But before then, I was very focused on extracurricular activities, going for moots, writing on international law, speaking on international law issues, organizing conferences as IUSA president and before that Secretary General. So I was just focused on one thing. And one thing I would later learn when I was applying from someone who had been to Harvard was Harvard is looking for someone on a mission. They want to see a consistent story that you are doing this thing and that you know exactly what you're trying to achieve. So I guess my message to prospective applicants would be that if you're looking for something or if you really want to do something or yeah, you want to apply to grad school, be sure what you want to do in grad school and so that you have a pointed application so that everything about you is speaking towards that area you're trying to launch a career in. So look for opportunities in that area, look for fellowships, look for moot competitions, look for writing opportunities, look for speaking opportunities, look for conferences, do all of that as an undergrad. And then your chances are up when you come to apply. And even if you're not sure, do everything you think would, or do everything in line with whatever interest you have currently. It's always easier to tell the graduate committee in your application that at this point in my life, I thought I wanted to do corporate law, but now I now want to do finance, properly so called. So I think that's what I would say to anyone.
Thank you very much. I'm sure the participants are learning. Myself, I've taken a bit of the hints that you've shared. So thank you again. I'll be asking Uche this time the same question, but I would like you to come from a more global perspective. And I'll give you context. You know, you were very specific about Canada. You said all your applications Canada. So I imagine that you've always wanted your LLM program to be in Canada. I just want to know anything, activities you did in the undergraduate in your undergraduate studies that kind of fed into this particular dream. And also very importantly, when you got to, do your LLM in Canada, were there insights you got from other persons that you fraternized with, and then you realize, oh, it's very important to do this thing, although I didn't do it, but I see that this is something that a lot of persons have been doing over time in their own schools, in other countries in the world, and it will help them to get to this place. So could you please share your experience in this regard?
Yes, thank you very much for that question. So as an undergraduate, I think that similar to what Victor said, I'd like to also restate that extracurricular activities are very great. Like good grades are fantastic. It's really good to have like the stellar grades, but extracurricular activities are also really good. So as an undergraduate in my school at the time, I know that I tried as possible to have like a balanced student life. So I had my eye on my grades, and I also had an eye on extracurricular activities. Like Victor, I participated in a number of moot and mock competitions, which I did well to highlight when I applied for my master's degree. Also, there were a couple of oratory competitions that I emerged successful, which I also indicated in my resume when I made my graduate school application application. There were also, I know at the time, as an undergraduate, I used to write for the Nation's newspaper at the time. And so I had several articles on the paper. I had several articles also on other magazines in school. I was editor-in-chief for a number of the first newspaper in my student newspaper in my university. So I think all of this and my resume, which I submitted for my graduate school application, I would like to think that they actually helped stand me out as, you know, the girl who could, or the applicant who wasn't just about academics, but also had other, was also going to be bringing other flavors to my graduate school. So as having come to Canada and interacted with a number of people, it's really sad because most of my lectures were virtual, so interactions were very limited. But having spoken to a number of people, I think that one of the advice that I would give to the prospective applicant is they should look to things that have global flavor to them. I know there were a number of people who, beyond doing moot and mock competitions and national oratorial competitions, had also been involved in notable fellowships that were of a global scale. And so when we had the course to discuss all our graduate school applications and the matters that we thought stood us out, they said they had no iota of doubt that, you know, those were the things, like the global experiences that they had, those were the things that stood them out. For instance, I know. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I know,
Can
for
hear you.
instance, that there was a particular applicant who had done several projects with Barack Obama, and he was like, whenever he applies for anything, virtually anything, he always highlights that, and it's like it's very fantastic. Like, he's always sure that his application is going to be successful. So in addition to this, I also would like to advise writing essays and articles are also very important, especially when they're on topical global issues. So while submitting my graduate school application, I was required to write an essay. And at the time, I didn't want to write something that was just particular to Nigeria. And so I wrote an essay that was on financial technology, and it also had a global flavor to it. So I would like to think that as a young lawyer applying at the time, that's something that gave me comparative advantage, if you like. So I hope that answers the question. But yeah, I think essentially, or to wrap it up, that extracurricular activities on the graduate stage is really important. Grades are really important. And also, if one can find one in something that has a global touch to it, by all means, go for it. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Uche. This has been really insightful, honestly. I'll ask the same question now to Chufa. I like that he particularly mentioned how he has been able to get a lot of connects from, studying in New York. I'm sure from having those connections, from conversations, you must have heard people say, oh, these were a couple of things that I did, and I think that they've been very material to bringing me here. I'm asking this question because most of the students in Nigeria, we tend to have quite a limited perspective to these things. So maybe because the opportunities or the platforms are not enough. So I would like you to also share, what do you think other students outside Nigeria that you've been able to discuss with, have conversations with, what do you think they do that also helps them stand out in their applications when they come to schools like NYU, the Ivy League schools in the UK or in the US? The question for Tochukwu.
Thank you, Destiny. I couldn't agree more with Victor and Uche on the need for extracurricular activities. Just like Victor, I was also involved in muting, and I was a judge at the jural court during my graduate school at UNIBEN. And to also emphasize how important all these activities are, your NYU, or rather, let me use myself, my NYU transcripts actually, because I was an editor in the Law and Business Journal at NYU. Your transcript, they will specifically state that in your transcript that you were an editor, you're an editor in the Law and Business Journal. So that goes to show the fact that it's really important that we get these extracurricular activities anyhow we can. It could be politics, it could be getting involved in some of these other activities that you can get involved in. It's true that your grades are really important, but also from my interactions, I realized that these guys, like Uche mentioned, have other things they've been involved in, not just their grades. They have internships, they have so many other activities they've done, being in politics, school politics, as little as that might be, but is also important. Also, for a young lawyer, a young professional, you should also be deliberate on what you want in your career to be. So at the time I made up my mind I was going to be applying to NYU, and I'd said that because I like structuring deals, I like the capital markets and all, I made up my mind that the briefs I should show interest in should be more of corporate related finance, capital market briefs and deals. So I got involved in the Seplat IPO, which was dually listed at the Nigerian Stock Exchange and the London Stock Exchange. And that was one thing so apart from my grades, which I clearly stated, for instance, make sure you state something like 4.5/5.0 when you're making these applications, because they will clearly see what your grades are like. Then I mentioned that. I also mentioned my jury court activities, and I also mentioned my experience at my law firm that I worked in after my graduate school. So these are things you need to specifically state that will make the odds be in your favor when you are making these applications. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tochi. It's as if I'm also a participant. I've heard a lot about extracurricular activities. I've heard being involved in activities that have some international flavor, global flavor. It's not like they're saying grades is not important. I think good grades are very, very important. Most of our participants were actually top 1% of their class. So in case they're not telling you that, most of them were top 1%. So definitely grades play a very major role in their application process. So in addition to having all of these extracurricular activities, which is super duper important, it's almost like, you have a first class and then I can also do X, Y, Z. It gives you an edge over the other thing that all the person has is just the first class. And then you have a first class, or you have a 2-1, and then there is the plus, and the people are like, okay, I think I want this person. I want to go back to Ilias. Ilias is someone I know personally is a master strategist. Ilias is very internal. Ilias, I want you to tell us, during your undergraduate program and when you started working post-undergraduate, how strategic were you? How intentional were you, right? And how do you want our participants to strategize? How should they consider all of these issues when they are thinking of applying for the graduate program?
Okay,
Yes.
Thank you very much. I think that when it comes to strategy, it doesn't have to be on a straight line. And I'm going to illustrate using 2 instances that I personally experienced. One is that I was in Nigeria and I wanted to study abroad, but you will wonder what I was doing in Unilag, right? I was doing my master's also in University of Lagos at the time that I was applying abroad, because I wanted to have my master's and I didn't want a situation whereby it would be like, oh, okay, because I wanted to have it abroad and I don't have it yet. At that time, I already had admission in Manitoba, which was half scholarship. I can already see some messages on the chat box about funding, because that's a very huge bucket, right? So I got half scholarship, but I wanted full scholarship, right? So I was studying in University of Lagos for my master's while I was working in BNI. and pursuing my admission abroad for a full scholarship, right? Which I eventually got. The second point about the strategy not being on a straight line is that my master's was on energy and environmental law. So the question you'll be asking is, if you're interested in arbitration or litigation, what are you doing with energy and environmental law? The point is, apart from Queen Mary, you hardly will find a top school that will give you arbitration, right? So what they would essentially give you is maybe general commercial law and what have you. But I am not only interested in arbitration, I am also passionate about energy arbitration. That's arbitration in energy and natural resources law. So I found an NLM that could give me energy law, and then that would allow me to transition into becoming an arbitrator who can then have a lot of interest in energy and natural resources area. Because what I also found is, if you're going to be an arbitrator, if you don't have, subject matter knowledge in that particular area that you're interested in, it doesn't give you much of an edge. There are so many arbitrators around the world. So if you're interested in energy and natural resources, it doesn't make sense if you don't have a bit of background or knowledge around that particular subject area. So that's one strategy. But the strategy that is relevant to applying is what everybody has been saying, that it doesn't really matter whether you've got the admission or funding or not. What matters is what you're doing right now with your time. Someone once asked me what went into the application for my PhD, and I told the person that it was a project from 2006 to 2020. And it was like, how are you applying for PhD for that long? I said, no, it's because everything I had done between 2006 and 2020 counted towards that PhD application. Because you're just highlighting, this year I did this year I did that. You won't say you worked in BNI and somebody will say, oh, that's what firm is that in Nigeria, for example? They'll say, oh, that's a top law firm, let's listen. If you say, oh, okay, during this period that I was not in school, I did an internship with XYZ organization, people are going to check up what is that organization about. If you say you did your master's in a particular university, they will check it up. So the challenge we have sometimes is that when we make applications, if you see it as an application that is focusing on the period now, I think that chances are that you're going to get it wrong. But if you look at it that is a 20 or 10-year project, like what have you been doing in the last 10 years? What tells us that if we give you this admission or funding, because in my own case, it was not only about the admission. If you gave me admission, you didn't give me funding, like people are mentioning in the chat box, I was not going to attend postgraduate abroad because I would not be able to afford it, right? So to be able to get admission and funding, I needed to go, a step further to show what I have been doing, what I intend to do, what I'm doing now. And a whole lot of that is what eventually came up to success in the application process on both ends, because I'm also fully funded for my PhD as well.
Thank you, Elias. I mentioned that Elias is a master strategist. I wasn't joking. I wasn't lying. I didn't make that up. You can chat Elias up later. I will give you all the strategies in this world. So I want to come quickly to you with respect to work experience, right? I want to know there are people that will go straight from law school to go and do their masters. There are people that will just probably spend a year. Uche spent like 5 years. Elias spent like 5 years. Leah spent about 3 years. I think I spent it about a year, 7 months. And I want to know how well does work experience play out, not just in the application process, even during your graduate studies. How were you able to? Did it make it more beneficial for you? Did it help you in directing your mind to the courses you're going to take and all of that? Tola, can you please help us out?
All right, thank you. So work experience, very important. If I'm going to advise my younger self, I think I'm going to say that I should wait a bit before going for a master's, probably do 2 years or 3. In my own case, I finished from law school in 2012, so I stayed back for about another 3 years before going to UPenn in 2015. So I think you should give yourself some time to, hello?
We can
Can
hear
hear
you.
you,
All right,
can
thank
hear
you.
you.
Hear you.
Okay, so I would say you should give yourself some time to get a proper understanding of what exactly do you want to do. So I know a number of us, we come out from university, we come out from law school, and immediately, maybe because of our very fantastic grades, we just want to head to the graduate school. Yes, that is also good, but I think you also need some time to sit down, go through the work, go through that work experience, and determine for yourself, what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Is it corporate law? Is it intellectual property law? Is it banking? Is it securities? What area are you looking at? Is it international law? Is there arbitration? Even if it's arbitration, like Elias just mentioned now, do you want to focus on energy and natural resources? Are there other things you want to do, maritime law? So maybe during that time for work experience, you'll be able to sit down, settle in, and decide this is exactly what I want to do. And it won't be a situation of, oh, I want to be a generalist, I'm just going to do an LLM for the sake of doing it. So in my own case, I think staying back, yes, and gaining that work experience, it actually helps you when you're preparing your documentation and your application to those schools. When you're preparing your personal statement, you have more broadened knowledge about what to write down and what to put in your application. So in my case, I think my advice would be for people to get the experience. I think it counts very well for you to get the experience. You are clear on the path you want to follow and the program that you actually want to go to. There is clarity that, okay, in my case, for example, I knew it was something around corporation law, corporate law. So going to UPenn and taking some courses from Wharton was actually very beneficial for me as well. So I think it's a right step in the right direction to take some time, just as I would advise that before people go in house, they should actually work in a law firm. So in this case now, I think it's very important, get that work experience, be very clear. It can be 2 years, it can be 3 years, be very clear as to what exactly you want to do. However, if from university, you are very clear as to this is the path I want to go to, this is the path I want to tread, this is what I want to do. Right after your university and law school, if you have funding for it, which is a very, very key factor. And for example, if you have like full scholarship for it right after law school, please go for it. Well, I'm an advocate for gaining work experience. I believe it counts.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tola. I deeply agree that at least you need to understand what you want to do. You need maybe to get some experience. But if you feel that, oh, you just want to go for your master's immediately, you don't need this work experience, I think you can also do it. But my one advice is that you try and get some experience, before you proceed. And Tola, I think it's a part of it. One part of the question is that how did your work experience help you during the graduate program itself? I will speak for myself. While I was in BNI for that 1 to 2 years period, I was able to understand a bit of M&A, a bit of private equity. And then when I got to Harvard, I was able to take courses that are private equity related. And in case some of you don't know, I'm very much interested in private equity. And my interest in private equity grew from my studies at Harvard. Yes, I started seeing 1 or 2 transactions in BNI, but when I got to Harvard, I had specialists come in, talk to us. My professor was then a private equity partner at a law firm. He was former GC of an hedge fund. He was former director of the US investment division. So the guy was all around. He had an all-around private equity experience. So that kind of like helped me. So how did the work experience help you?
Okay, so the work experience did help me. Before I left Nigeria, like I said, I worked with Jackson and Edu, and just like Marvis, I was in the private equity CM&A department, that's corporate mergers and acquisition. And yes, still getting my footing right into the M&A space. By the time I got to UPenn, and I was actually now taking courses around mergers and acquisition, also around private equity, focused more around corporate financial planning. They didn't seem like, oh, this was actually something that is strange. There were things I've actually heard of about, maybe at preliminary level, but at my graduate level, at the graduate school level, I can actually now relate a bit more, and I'm more familiar with what I'm learning in school and what I'm hearing, and I contribute in class and also during my discussion with my colleagues as well. So it actually proved very, very beneficial for me, I would say.
Yeah, thank you. I would have loved to ask the other panelists, but we're kind of like running out of time. I'll just let Destiny take over.
Okay, thank you very much, Mavis. Thank you very much, Tola, for that answer. I think every participant here already imagines that, oh, well, if I should stay up for, let's say, 1, 2 years, that should necessarily feed into something. I mean, it will most likely be different if I just went there straight from the law school and I don't have any practical knowledge of anything. So I want to ask another very interesting aspect of this whole process. And I will be asking Tochukwu first. Could you please tell us how important it is to maintain some relationship with your lecturers back in school, in undergraduate studies, for the purpose of having references, and more importantly, for students who don't have those form of relationship? You know, there are schools where if you try to dabble too much into that space, you might not like the outcome. Here we are in Nigeria. So for students who left school, they don't have those relationships, and of course, they need references. What do you think they can do to get these references?
Thank you, Destiny. So I agree with you, and I would say that having a very good relationship with your lecturers are very, very important when it comes to applications for graduate school, because you'll be required to get references from your lecturers. And in some schools, we actually ask you to get from your work colleagues, but which is why it is important to actually work for, say, 1 or 2 years, like Tola mentioned, before you proceed. But so in the event that you intend to move from undergraduate immediately to apply for grad school, then you need to have a good relationship, because like I mentioned, for lack of a better word, I was lazy in applying. Reason being that I knew that some of my references, I wouldn't have any issues with getting my references. I had very good relationship with my lecturers. Like 5 of the lecturers, Mavis can attest to that. I have very good relationships with them. So when it was time for me to get my reference, I just picked my phone and called them to say, I called 2 of my lecturers, actually 3 of my lecturers. I called Mrs. Stewart, Mavis knows her. I called Atta, Mr. Atta, and Dr. Arishi. And I said, guys, I need this, and I need it in 2 weeks because I'm running out of time to make my application. And they actually did it. And within 1 week, they mailed the references back to me in Lagos. And they posted it from Benin, actually. So it's quite important that you have this relationship with your lecturers. How can you develop this relationship? You can develop it by, again, everything ties to this. You need to have good grades. These lecturers they like students that participate in their classes. They like students with good grades. That with this, once you participate and you have good grades, you can always call your lecturers to say, please, I need a reference. If you don't have that relationship with them, you can't just call them up, because the first question they will ask you is that, were you in my class? I didn't know you. So you need to have that relationship for you to get references from your lecturers. Then if you can't get from the lecturers, like myself, I've done a couple of references for some colleagues that I was their senior in the first place I worked, and even the subsequent places, law firms I worked in as well. They come to me and say, Tochi, please, can we get a reference from you? And because I know these guys, because I've worked with them, and because I know the quality of their work, I'm always happy to give references. And about 2 of them are already in their grad school in the US. So it's important, again, to emphasize that it's important, if you want to go to grad school immediately after your undergraduate program, that you have good relationships with your lecturers. And if otherwise, when you work, you can have good relationship with your colleagues, because references can also come from your colleagues at work. Thank you.
And thank you very much. Omole, off the back of what I was going to ask you off the back of what he just said.
Yeah,
so, I think my question is first.
In the chat.
Just hold on. Yes, he's going to treat that.
Yeah, I'm bringing up the question from the chat. Can you hear me clearly? Okay. Yeah, some students are not people persons. They just worth through school and they don't maintain those relationships. And you know, good riddance to bad rubbish. You want to apply to a grad school, you need a reference. You don't have that relationship. What would be your advice? How do you think students can go about either in workplaces or through their extra lecturers? What would be your advice in that regard?
Okay, thank you, Destiny. Yes, it's important to have good grades. Eventually, everybody likes to identify with something that is good. But if for any reason you don't have a personal relationship with your lecturers, somebody has suggested that you can use the colleague route. But for example, for my course, you needed 3 references, and 2 must be at least academic reference. So it means that for a graduate school, even though your colleagues are good, I want to believe most schools still want to know a reference from when you were doing your academics. So if you don't, for any reason, I would say that look into lecturers that, for example, that supervise your projects. I don't know how project works in many other schools, but I know that in Unilag, if you had the supervisor, at the very minimum, you will have met the supervisor like twice or at least exchange emails. With your project supervisor, your name might have registered. By the time I needed my own reference, my supervisor didn't even remember me much, but I went to the school on a day to go and see him. And if your school is not in maybe Lagos or you can't easily access, I would say you can get your lecturer's phone number and text. Be nice. They may not respond on the first time, but you can give it like 3 tries. I tried to visit my lecturer and then I introduced myself saying that he supervised me and he would remember that he gave me an A. And because he gave me an A, I'm hoping that he'll be able to at least testify to my good grades and my opportunity to enter into a grad school. So you can look into that. And if for any other thing other than your normal school of grades, you have 1 or 2 interaction with a lecturer, or even if it's secretary, sometimes your faculty officers and your admin staff in your university may be able to tell you that, oh, this lecturer actually gives students references without even personal relationships. So you may need to also look beyond just your normal grades. You can also look into your faculty office. I think they also help with such kind of requests.
Thank you, Omoleye. You're very right. I wanted to say, I'm not sure there is any school that treats academic reference and work experience reference as replacement, right? So you need both work experience, where relevant, and you definitely need academic reference. Academic reference is very, very important.
Like he's very good at writing professional reference.
And here I was trying not to sit in, Madam Mole.
Thank you,
well
sir.
done. I hope I will get personal coaching so that I can get admitted to an Ivy League too. Those of us that didn't go to Ivy League. Elias.
Yes, sir.
My brother.
Everybody. This is Issa Alade. Issa Alade is one of the partners in the Issa Alade is my supervising partner at the moment. In case you need a job in BNI, you can buzz
Yes.
Kusha, I don't see your hand.
Okay, yeah. So you're right. So in the impossible scenario that, oh, this student didn't have any relationship with any lecturer, professor, or that your workplace, your immediate supervisor can give you reference. I mean, try and look for other of your work colleagues that can give you, senior colleagues that can give you reference. I know people that got into Harvard that their immediate supervisors didn't give them reference, right? They got into Harvard. And so what you can do is, particularly with respect to lecturers, you can write very detailed emails. You never can know who knows who, right? You can go through different routes, but please ensure that you try and make contact. Don't say, you know what, I don't even know any of my lecturers. There's no hope for me. There is hope. You can just still try. Write an email, do a physical visit, get someone to talk to someone, and definitely you can. Just keep trying, keep trying. Yeah, there's never a roadblock. Destiny, you can continue.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much, Mavis. And thank you very much, Omale. That was great and very practical too. I'll bring in Victor at this point. I will need him to just, in a word of 1 syllable, just tell us what's the place of mentorship in all of this? They don't have to be academics, but what's the place of mentorship in all of this? Because some of you mentioned that your process, the application process was a little bit shorter than others, 3 months, 4 months. I'm very sure a lot of guidance went into that. I mean, I can imagine for some persons it went into that. So Victor, can you please share your experience, if you have any in this regard? How does mentorship really help in making very great applications?
Yeah, I have to say that mentorship is very indispensable. In my own personal life, I needed a lot of mentorship. I was so concerned about making my own career transition that I would eventually be connected to someone who was on the admissions board of New York University. And so, in that regard, she was very benevolent to tell me exactly what she thought I needed to get into the program. And it so happened, but more than just talking to people who are probably ahead of you, it's important to talk to people who are just intermediately ahead of you, people who have gone to where you are, where you're trying to get to, and people who are also on the same path as you are. I don't think that you can ever overestimate the importance of talking to people and getting mentorship. There's this mystical idea about mentorship that there has to be this formalized, standardized way to be mentored. I don't think so. I think I've benefited from mentorship from many more people that I did not even particularly strike a I want to be your mentee conversation with. And it went a long way, not only to encourage me to apply to certain places, but also to inspire me. And for me, in applying to Harvard, I didn't have a first class anywhere. So I needed to talk to people who got into Ivy League schools without getting a first class. And meeting such persons gave me that courage to make my application. One of the words I would not forget that someone told me was, um, um, if you think you're going to Harvard or if you think you can get into Harvard to make it an icing on the cake for you, you're wrong. As a matter of fact, you are the icing on Harvard's cake. And so you're looking to call your name in a couple of years' time and say, oh, yeah, the current Prime Minister of India or the current Minister of Information in Nigeria was a Harvard alumni. So they want to see that prospect in you. And I got that sense from being mentored by many, many, many people. So more than talking to people who are way ahead of you, talk to people who are on your level and talk to people who are just a little bit above you. Telling people about your dreams and aspirations would go a long way to help you become those things you're thinking. I remember there's a lot of opportunities I've gotten, and it came from a phone call from someone saying, yeah, Victor, I remember we had this conversation that you wanted to do this. So I saw this opportunity. Would you be interested? There are a couple of fellowships I had gotten that I did not need to stress to apply for. I got a call from someone or an email. I know you want to do this. Would you like to apply for this position? So in that sense, I think mentorship is absolutely important. I don't think you need to define mentorship by a standardized process. I think it's just enough to talk to people who have been where you are, who are going to where you want to be to, or who are on the same level with you on the same trajectory.
Thank you so much, Victor. And just to say, I still have mentors, right? At the moment, at some point, Tochi was also my mentor. When I was applying to school, I spoke to Tochi about the schools I was applying to. When I got some admissions, I was Tochi, I got this one. What do you think? Tochi was like, yeah. So I had mentors. Not necessarily. You don't need to look for way older people. It could just be the person that is just a year ahead of you, that is currently probably at Oxford or Cambridge. Talk to as many people as possible. I mean, for those of us that are Christian, the Bible said, in the multitude of counsel, there's safety, right? So talk to as many people as possible so that you can get their experience, you can get their perspective. And I've had chats before with a lot of people as well, and I continue to talk to them about the application process as well. So mentorship, you cannot really tell. I still have lots of mentorship. You'll be surprised. I still have tons of people I speak to. Even my friends, some of my co-friends, they're actually my mentors. I want to make a decision. I'm like, what do you think about it? Do you think it's a good run through the process? I even found out that some of my younger colleagues also kind of like serve as my, sounding board, mentor, whatever you call it. But please always open that avenue to have mentorship. Mentorship is very, very important. Don't island, don't say, oh, I don't want to talk to anybody. You don't need that. Please talk to as many people as possible. Don't worry, they're not your village people. We won't take away your plans and and turn into something else. I want us to go through the application process itself. Uche, I don't know if Uche is still with us. I just want us to tell us briefly what should guide the selection process. Why should you pick, say, in the case of Omoleye, Masters in Law and Finance? Why should you go to Canada for it? Why should you pick a particular school? Do you understand? So what should guide that decision process? What guide your own decision process? And what do you think the applicants should, prospective applicants and participants should do, particularly in global trend?
Okay, thank you very much, Mavis, for the question. So in submitting any application to a graduate school, I think that there are really 4 very important considerations that every applicant should bear or have on his or her mind. The first one is your passion. So you should never discount that passion is really important. You should only apply to courses that you really see like you see that you have a future in, and that your passion about. And then the second you should consider is it's really this is really agreeable, but in my view, whilst it's really important for you to pursue your passion and do the things that give you like genuine interest, it's also important for you to take a step back and determine whether in the event that you intend to like pursue a professional career in that field, ask yourself, is this particular field or is this particular course that I'm going to study, is it going to be relevant in the next 5 years? Is it going to be relevant in the next 20 years? Is it going to be relevant to my career path and my career plan? Then the very third important factor that one has to consider is the reputation of the graduate school. So one mistake I find that a lot of prospective applicants make is that they only consider the ranking of the university. So they go online, top ranking universities in the US, and then they apply to those graduate schools. You also have to consider the particular ranking of the graduate school, as well as the reputation of the graduate school, the specific graduate school that you're applying to, beyond just the general university's ranking. Then the fourth consideration that one must have at the back of one's mind is postgraduate plans. So and this goes to the country that you would choose, the country where you would apply to. So you also have to consider, okay, am I just making this application because I want to get my graduate law degree or graduate degree and then go back to Nigeria? Or is there like a bigger plan? Is there an additional plan, for instance? Or do I want to reside in that country? In which case you then have to start considering things like immigration requirements. You also have to consider things like how relevant that particular course is in that country. So overall, these are like the 4, I thought about it, and these are like the 4 major considerations that one has to really consider before in making a graduate school application. Yeah, so, and I think that also, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
We can.
Okay, great. So for me, the 4 factors are like the summary of them all. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Uchenna. Thank you so much, Uche. Thank you. I hope everyone took notes of the 4 factors. So one of it was super important based on global trend. Not gonna say it. If you know, you know. Destiny, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Uche. Before I continue with this question, I would just like to say for the participants, I can see from the questions in the chat box that everybody is really eager to know how funding goes. I think we really left it out from these first phases so that you can be patient with us and listen through. Everything flows into one another. So I will be asking this question to Adetola and to Chukwu. It's about personal statements. How were you able to write a convincing personal statement? And away from your personal experience, what have you learned so far about personal statements in general? What do you think people should consider when they are writing personal statements? Please, Tochukwu, you go first.
Okay, Destiny, thank you very much. So basically, for you, for a personal statement, there's something I've realized from going to NYU, right? I've realized that these guys, I would say they are not like Africans. They are very interested in brevity. They want these things to be concise and to be sharp and catchy, right? Something that will keep the person reading it captivated in whatever they are reading. So an example is, until you are 10 years post-call in the, I think it's 10 years post-call, maybe some others that went to US school can confirm, your CV or your resume is not, they don't allow it to be, they will not advise you for it to be more than 1 page. Reason is that they want a situation where someone looking at what you've written gets a full visibility without having to go through a lot of information, right? So you make your personal statement. It should be, there are 3 main things I consider should be in your personal statement, which we've touched on while we're speaking earlier. 1 should be about your educational experience. What have you done? How good you are? What are your grades? What do you think makes you stand out based on your educational experience aside from every other applicant? Secondly, what extracurricular activity have you done which will stand you out and also in line with the course you want to study, right? Then thirdly should be if you've had previous work experience. And I saw someone ask the question whether internship can be considered as work experience. Absolutely. Your internship can also be considered as your work experience. And these things you have to find also if you've written in any area, even if it's not in the area that you're applying for, but any area that you think is relevant, you need to also mention that in your personal statement. And all this will need to enter into not more than, I will advise 1 page, but if you can't concise it into 1 page, not more than 1.5 page. And it should be very captivating that the person reading it should want to know more about this person. Whenever you're writing this thing, have it at the back of your mind that there are 1001 applications this person is considering and looking at. And if your personal statement is not captivating enough, they might have to dump it to move to the next one. So once you have this, make sure your work experience, your academic experience, or then what you've done in the past, your extracurricular activities. Once these things are able to, you can concise this thing into a captivating 1-page personal statement. I can assure you that you already have a fit at the door. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tochukwu. I'm sure the participants are listening because obviously this is something that we all have to write as much as we are interested in grad school projects or programs. My takeaway from what he has said is let your personal statement be captivating. If I were to define captivating in personal terms, I would say something that is in between thought-provoking and chilled at the same time. So I'll just throw this now to Adetola. Could you please expatiate on this? What makes a personal statement captivating? And after your grad school project, up to currently, what have you learned about personal statements that you would like the participants to know? I'm asking this to Adetola.
All right, thank you. Okay, so for personal statement, I think I'll start by saying that participants and applicants should generally carefully read information that is required of you. Understand that information, what is required of you, because for some schools, they will actually ask you to write in maybe 500 words or 1,000 or 750 words. You need to understand the information that is required of you before you just start out to writing something. Now, the next point I would like to mention, again, on the back of what Tochukwu has said, is that you should research the course you're applying for so that you can explain, because in your personal statement, irrespective of even the question that is asked of you, there will still be need for you to explain why you want to study that course, why you are applying for that course, and what exactly you want to use that course for. One thing that I want to mention at this junction is that please don't use one personal statement for all applications. Please, I know we tend to do that a lot, even in our job applications. Please, one personal statement, please don't use it for all your applications. Make sure you tailor your personal statement for the program you're applying for the school you're applying for, so that you are better, you're at a better advantage and position. So the following question, I think in writing your personal statement, you should ask yourself the following questions, and where you are putting your thoughts down to paper, you will be able to write appropriately. I think the first question you will be, why do you want to study a master's and how will it benefit you? After you've been able to answer that question, you can go ahead to ask yourself, how does the course fit your skill set? The skill set that you have, how does it fit? Then the third, and which is very important, like Chuku mentioned, you have thousands of applications going through the desk of the admissions committee. So you need to ask yourself, how do you stand out from the crowd? Is it work experience? Is it your degree? Is it your education qualification? And this is the time for you to flaunt it. But please, in doing so, be brief and be concise and straight to the point. It's not just the time for you to throw words around, buzzwords here and there. You have to be brief, straight to the point. And again, like I said, how do you stand out from the crowd? Then the fourth point will be, what are you aspiring to be or do in your future career? And how can your work, maybe what you've done before, your experience, contribute to the department you're going into or the university? Then in preparing your personal statement, I would like to encourage participants and applicants to think about, ask yourself, what are the fresh insights you're bringing to this course, to the class as a whole? What distinguishes from candidate A from Ghana to you that you're applying from, let's say, Nigeria? And also, what are the reasons why you have chosen the school? So put all of this together, and I agree with what Tochukwu has said, but I'll just list some things you should be very mindful of. Spelling and grammar mistakes, please watch out for that. You should also avoid exuberant language, pointless cliches, like I mentioned. Maybe you are just endlessly listing all your extracurricular activities, or you're overusing some quotations and all of that. Try and tell a story, a compelling story. See yourself as a brand, as a package, and tell a compelling story around what you've done before and what you're trying to achieve. Be concise and brief as much as possible, bearing in mind that there are thousands of other applications that the admission officer is taking a look at.
So thank you so much. I don't know. I think yourself and Tochi, you guys put it so well. You even went to the extent of talking about grammar and all of that. What I want to add is I also get to look at people's personal statement from time to time. And my feedback to everyone that I've looked at their personal statements is, I must be able to read your personal statement and not stop reading it till I finish. If I can't read it and not stop till I finish, then there's something wrong with it. If I'm going to be breaking as I'm reading, I'm saying something else, and I'm like, okay. So how do you get to that point of captivating someone with your personal statement? Like Tola said, tell a story. It can be your story. Tell your story, and make sure your personal statements are paragraphed, right? I know, for instance, Oxford will probably tell you to write only 300 words. You would imagine, 300 words, yeah, so small. What are you going to say in 300 words? So you need to be concise. Every paragraph and every sentence must say something different. You cannot afford to be repetitive. If you've said, oh, I was the best graduating once, you cannot say it again. You said that best, and you must make sure you said it in a way that the person reading it remembers that Uche was the best graduating in a set. You must tell a story from start to finish, right? Paragraph 1 must say something different from second paragraph. It must be new information as the person is reading. That's the only way to keep the person captivated. If you're going to be doing repetitive information, the person is going to be bored and then is going to zoom out. Make sure like you're telling a new story with a new paragraph. You're starting, you can talk about your background. And you can be vulnerable if you need to be. I mean, come from a family that you are the first in your family to have a university education. Of course, you can say it, but you don't have to say your full family is that they are all illiterate. You find a very nice way to say that, oh, I'm the first generation graduates in my family. If you come from a low income family, you can say that, oh, I struggle, I went through some stuff in school. I come from a low income family, but I was able to excel. But you don't need to say, oh, my parents are or something, right? You can be vulnerable about your application. You can talk about your background in your application, because those are the things that makes you unique. Those are the things that regardless of your situation, you're able to excel. Yeah, so that's the thing I want to add about personal statement. Destiny, I think you have one question for Victor and Leah, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Okay. I mean, just to on the back of that, right? I want to ask Victor. Maybe it's my own question. Victor, what would you consider as the greatest challenge you faced during your application process? I mean, just very briefly, a one-liner.
Well, I guess for me, it was my personal statements, and it was how to convince the admissions office that, well, even though I have a corporate regulatory compliance background, I have demonstrated interest in international law, and I want to go that route. And I guess that was possibly what I really went through, and I think I resolved this by talking to people and having my personal statement reviewed over and over again, and mostly just showing interest and some experience within the area of law I was trying to branch into. So I understand all your concerns about, and that's the listeners now. I understand all your concerns about personal statements, and just make one comment. I'm sorry, maybe just one more second. There are two ways to look at to approach personal statement depending on the jurisdiction you're applying to. I've found that American schools are more interested or would very much appreciate anecdotal personal statements that tell of the story. For example, I lost my father or my grandfather died in the Nigerian Civil War. That's captivating. That's okay. So what happened to you? And that's how Americans like it, I think. The UK or Europe, as I would find, are more, they would rather prefer you to editorialize an aspect of law that you're trying to investigate or research on. And so you probably want to go straight to the point in your UK or Europe application and say, well, this is the defects in the Nigerian legal system, this is the defects in the law, and I want to cure it by doing this and that. But for America, you want to tell a story that is consistent, that tells who you are. They want to be able to relate with you and say, oh yes, I remember there's a Destiny who had a first class in law school and the university, and he didn't come from a family that is this and this and that. And that's one way to be memorable. So I guess that's the word. In writing your personal statement, try to be memorable. Would they remember that there's this person who did this? Remember, you're not the only person who made the first class or who made the double first class. You're not the only person who has this writing blog or has this editorial experience. There are a whole lot of other people. So you want to think about what is that signature thing about you that makes you different, that makes them call you back in their minds. So those are my thoughts, and that's how I dealt with my personal statement.
Thank you, Leah. Victor has spoken about the perspective of the UK and the US. And Leah, can you also delve into that a bit and also tell us what was challenging about your application process?
On the back of what Victor said about telling the story, initially I did not know what that would mean, and I happened to read two of people's personal statements. That includes you yourself, Mavis. And when I read your personal statements, I realized that wasn't me. I mean, Mavis was best in a university, overall best in law school. I even had a double 2-1 actually. And I started looking inward to discover, okay, what is that unique thing about me? What do I have to offer? Then I started making research about my master's program, for example. And then my master's was an MSc in Law and Finance. And I discovered that the subset of the class was like a 3-tier. They were the people that had a first degree in finance before they studied law. And they were the set of people that were core lawyers and practitioners like myself, which was the box I fell in. And there was the fresh undergraduates from university. So they tried to create a mix of all these to bring all these 3 set of people into a class. And I started looking at myself, okay, yeah, I had a 2-1, right? But then I was still top of my class, and I was able to do these other extracurricular, which we have appropriately dealt with. Then I started telling myself that, okay, my own story can be that I did all of these other things and I still made these good grades. So maybe that would sell. For my research about the category I fell into, the classes that the people that had practiced as a lawyer, I started looking at myself and I thought, okay, actually, I can say a story from this, right? All my life, I knew I wanted to be a corporate kind of lawyer, but I really did not know what kind of law I wanted to specialize in. And then my practice in Bawan then made me realize that, oh, I could actually do more like a specialized master, which was why I said, okay, not LLM, maybe an MSc. And then I said, okay, I'd done ICSA, right? I'm a charter secretary. Okay, why did I do this? What made me interested? And I started looking into myself and realizing what was going to sell me and how I could tell my story, right? So for me, those were like challenges that I was able to then derive what was unique about me and how I could package my application well. In terms of what Europe and US is like, I would maybe align myself with what Victor has said. I don't have much experience with US application system, and then for UK, I only applied to Oxford, and I hadn't seen anybody's, or even to now, I've not seen anybody's essay that went to Oxford. So I wouldn't know, but I don't also want to think that there's a standard template of, oh, everybody that comes to Oxford must have a first class, must have a this, must have a that. I just think you just need to be able to realize what is unique about you, what you can offer to the class, and why they should pick you. And then if you look inwardly to the things that you have done in the last couple of years, like Elias explained, I think you'll be able to tell a story to them where they put personal statements.
Thank you so much, Omalaye. Omalaye said, you need to identify what is unique about you. So there are going to be thousands of applications if you're going to apply to schools like Harvard and NYU, Columbia, Cambridge, Oxford. There'll be hundreds, if not thousands, and you have the same set of people reading your documents, and you need to be able to distinguish yourself. And like I said, it has to be your own story. It can't be Mavis's story, it can't be Leia's story. Everybody just has that unique story. And if you've been listening to the panelists, they've talked about how you can have that story by getting involved in extracurricular activities. I mean, of course, we mentioned that we mentioned a lot of undergrads, but you can still continue to do all of even as a young lawyer as well. I remember after law school, I realized that I needed a lot of social work. So what I did was I was very active in legal aid. I wanted to, I mean, they kind of like chose Harvard for me anyway. I wanted to go to Harvard, and I knew that Harvard will bounce back people with double first as well. They don't care. You know, they don't want you, whether you have 5 first classes or 10. They don't want you, don't want you. And I wanted to have that extra, you know, what extra can I do? I was very serious with legal aid. I would go to Ikoyi prison, I would go to district courts, you know. And then I kind of like started the whole mentorship thing. I was very serious with mentorship programs, you know. I'll go back to law school. I'll do similar thing in my church, you know. So those kind of like helps that in addition to, oh, okay, maybe this is this, you know, she can also do this extra stuff, you know, just in case there's someone with like same resume. Okay, let's go to funding. A lot of people have been talking about funding, right? Funding is very key. Funding it's probably one of the most important factors. You can get into Cambridge, you can get into Oxford, you can get into Harvard and probably not have funding. And I'm going to put a disclaimer out there. I mean, I stand to be challenged. You can't get into Harvard Law and have funding problem. I'm happy to be corrected. Please, no Harvard Law admitted person will do a GoFundMe. I mean, it's a school I attended, I can speak for it. Harvard Law School, I'm very sure of, does not have a scholarship program. What they have is financial aid, which will come in form of grants and loans that won't kill you, right? So once you yeah, the Harvard Law admission is blind. That's what they call it. Is admission is a process that is blind. They don't look at your financials. They don't look at whether you can afford this. What they look at is, do I want this person? And when they pick you out, they do try to make sure it works, whether by giving you grants or by giving you grants and loan. Okay, so there's no scholarship as far as that I know. Victor, you can correct me. But if you get into Harvard, I think the least of your worries, to be honest, you're coming from a developing economy, the least of your worry will be funding. But having said that, I'm aware that there are so many top schools that funding is always a big problem, right? And I want to ask the panelists, how should we be thinking about funding when we are applying to schools? Should I just apply to Cambridge? Should I just apply to Oxford when I know there are people that got into Oxford and Cambridge that didn't get it? They didn't get funded. I mean, I've gotten into Oxford and Cambridge, didn't get funded, right? Should I just, what should happen? How should I be thinking about this whole process? Elias, I'm going to start with, because you got into Aberdeen with full tuition, full scholarship, your PhD and your master's. So Elias, when people are making this preparation, all of these plans, how should they be thinking about funding?
Okay, thank you very much. I think that they should approach funding from the same way they approach their personal statement, which is also the key part of the application. They should outline what are the factors, what are the available opportunities. There are some opportunities within the schools that you're applying for, and there are some that are applicable to you just because you are from Nigeria or just because you are from a part of Nigeria, for example, right? So you need to identify those funding opportunities and give them your best, the same thing, the same energy you're giving the admission application, if not more. That's if the funding is very important for you, like myself, right? We are already disadvantaged when we come from Africa or some part of the world when it comes to funding, because we are not we don't have access to student loan, which is the key part of funding here in the UK, for example, right? And in some other part of the world as well, US, Canada, and all. So if you are from Europe, you could apply for a loan, meaning that you don't need to worry yourself about what it is that we're talking about in scholarship, but we don't have access to that. So what we have access to is scholarships that are within the school itself. And you have to check every school I checked when I was applying, I have to check the funding aspect. What are the funding they have for me as an African or as a Nigerian? So I put that in the bucket and then I check what requirements they need for that particular funding application. Generally speaking, many of the funding application attracts, in addition to merit, they attract to need. So many times they are always on need basis. So why in many cases you could get an admission purely on merit. Okay, you have a good grade, you have extracurricular activities, you have a whole lot of other things. But in funding application, if you don't demonstrate need in addition to merit, you might not get the funding or you might not get the entire tuition fee. They might give you maybe some percentage, right? So you need to demonstrate need and you need to demonstrate why are they funding you? You can put yourself in the shoes of the person providing the funds. Why am I spending my money on this person? What exactly do I want to gain in funding them if they've not demonstrated that they've been doing something in a couple of years back and they have a great vision in the future? Somebody mentioned, I think it was Victor, that said when you're applying to Harvard, for example, you do not see yourself as the icing on the cake for Harvard, but you see Harvard as icing on the cake for you. You are the cake, you are the brand. So this person is funding you because they know that they want to be part of this great vision you have in the future. So they want to be associated with you. So I think you can approach that funding application from that perspective, that there's something unique in me that will make a funder to want to fund me, so that in the future they can be associated with me. I can look back and say, I was funded during my postgrad by this particular thing. So in Nigeria, for example, if you are from Niger Delta, there are some funding applications, some scholarships that are applicable to Niger Delta. If you are just a Nigerian, there are some applications like Chevening, in the UK, which allow you to apply for scholarship, and then you check the ones in the schools that you're applying to to make sure that you apply for those fundings. I've also heard a couple of other things about GoFundMe, that people go online and just basically ask for funds. And I've heard about people being funded by their government also. People go as far as applying for fund in their state government, right? And if you're lucky, maybe if you have somebody, which also comes back to connection again that we've spoken about, building some network around what it is. So if you have access to that as well, you could apply for that. But I was lucky and I got a funding for both master's and PhD, which is within the university itself. So that gives you a lot of comfort because, I mean, university, if they decide that they're going to fund you, you don't have any worries about, okay, my school fees has not been paid by my funder. Like a couple of stories we had last year was some scholars who were funded by NDDC. So they had issues that NDDC had not paid their school fees to the universities. So the university started chasing them, even though they ended up paying it. But a lot of worries that come with that could be avoided if you are able to get scholarships within the university that you're applying for. And I think that every school that you check to apply for an admission, you should also check what funding opportunities are available for you and what specific requirements do they need for that particular application so that you can tailor your application towards meeting those requirements to get funding. Lastly, you cannot apply for funding, just one funding. Like, oh, I'm just applying for this one scholarship and that's it. Like maybe Chevening, maybe one internal school scholarship, and that's just it. I think that scholarships are more competitive than admission. So because of that, you must identify a number of scholarships that apply to you so that you can make all those applications with the hope that at least you get one or two. In my case, I got two, but one was half scholarship and then the one was full. So I went for the full scholarship.
Thank you, Elias. Thank you. That was very enlightening. I just want to say something from conversing with different people, and not from my own personal experiences to say. So when you're applying to schools, there are the first choice of schools, right? I don't know where you put them. And also have a second bucket for schools that they are ideally not your first choice, but they have good funding, or that based on what you have, right, you can get gen funding. So I'll give you an example. You want to go to Oxford, you want to go to Cambridge. But the reality is that you and I know that there are tons of people that gets admission into Cambridge and Oxford and they don't get funding. So what should you do? What I expect you to do is you've looked at yourself, you've seen, oh, I can get some funding based on my academics, because UK gives you scholarship based on your grades in school. People with first class, they easily attract a lot of funding. So why don't you go to your second buckets of schools, right? Go to a second bucket of schools and say, okay, what are the funding options they have? Can I go to this school and maybe subsequently I can find my way back to Oxford and Cambridge? I'm not saying that don't apply to Oxford and Cambridge, right? I'm not saying don't apply to Harvard and all of that, but I'm saying that try and edge your funding risk, because every day, every time I see people saying that they got admission into Oxford, Cambridge, particularly those two schools, I beef them a lot, and they don't give people funding, and I'm like, why? And then I don't hear people talk about, I applied to Yale, I applied to Stanford, I applied to Berkeley. There are so many schools in the US that have large endowments. Like Yale, for instance, has the second largest endowment in the US. If you're a Yale student, and Yale has like half of the students in Harvard, endowment of Yale and Harvard, the space is I don't think it's more than 10 billion or so, but yet their student ratio is very low. So if you get into Yale, for instance, funding will never be your problem. There's UC Berkeley, there is Stanford, there is a big school, and people don't go to those, and everybody wants to just go to Oxford and Cambridge, and then you still get a paper admission. So I mean, when you're applying to schools, yes, go to all of these big name schools, but please, can you have option B? Can you also try and have option B? right? Ilias, I don't know. That's why I'm getting to Ilias. I want people to also have option B.
Okay.
Going to Oxford, Cambridge, Harvard is important. But whilst applying for those schools, also have schools that you think that based on your credentials, they are going to give you funding. I know, for instance, NYU typically give people that have first class some kind of grants. You know, they give people, if you have first class, they give you some kind of, NYU will not leave you home and dry. I don't know anyone that has a first that went to NYU that they left, they didn't give him anything. Tochi, you can correct me, right? So I think that's how you should approach him from that perspective as well. Yes, you want to go to all of these top schools, you're praying so hard about it, you're working so hard about it, but there is the admission itself and there is the funding. And we know that schools like Oxford and Cambridge do not have the funding to take all their students. And that's the reality. I don't know if it's going to change soon. Out of like 10 admissions, maybe only 3 people will get full fund, and the other people, they will say you go and look for 70,000 or 6,000 pounds. From where? You know, but there are so many great schools. Always have an option B. Please, always have an option B. Someone just told me there is no option B. It's fine, right? But for those that want option B, please try and get option B. And there are top schools around the world. There are schools in Canada that will give you funding. You know, people just channel their energy into one school. I want to go to Harvard. I want to go to Oxford. It's fantastic, you know, but there are so many great schools out there that you and I don't even know of. So, sorry, I brought out a bit of energy there. I mean, Leah, what do you have to say about funding?
Leah.
Yes, Leah, you can help. Yes. Tell me a bit of what do you think about funding, and I'll also go back to Tochi.
Well, to be honest, I think Elias and Mavis has given the insight into general funding. I'm not a classic example in terms of funding, but for my experience with Oxford, because Oxford is the only school I applied to in UK, and I know that there are a bit of the general funding, like the Shiving that Elias mentioned, and maybe Rhodes. In my time, the Rhodes was suspended for Nigerians, but I know that Rhodes scholarship is back. But one of the not very good things to know about Oxford scholarship is that many of the scholarships, you don't need to apply for it. So for some schools, they tell you, oh, if you need funding, apply. But Oxford gives funding based on discretion. And by discretion, well, for me as an applicant or as an alumni, I don't think you can say what the criteria is on how they give you. So for example, I know one person that has gotten a funding from Oxford and another first class person that did not get. So, and it's not like they ask you for your funding like plans. I know Harvard will ask you, oh, what do you have? How much do you have? Give us proof and everything. Oxford doesn't ask you. And so maybe it's a game of luck, to be honest. You know, Oxford will tell you, oh, most of our funding are given at the time of admission. They don't require you to apply. Like 70% of Oxford scholarship don't require application. They just give. And so a lot of people then tend to be unlucky. But in my own case, I knew I wanted Oxford. I knew I wanted the MLF degree. So whatever I was going to take, I was going to be there. And the reason why I said I wasn't, maybe my story may not be similar to other people because, you know, I'm from a family of 5. That's the truth. I'm the last born. I have parents. I have big siblings. That's good. Support and help me. So for my own, because I'd worked for about 3 years, I had good savings. You know, BNI pays, and you know, I tried to save a lot of my earnings from BNI. Then by the time I got my admission, for my savings, I think I already had about 40% of what I needed to start my master's. Oxford gave me a 5K, but 5K out of like a 40,000 pounds. You will know that's good, but probably not good enough. So together for my funding with what I had, maybe I had about 50% of the money, but so the 50% of the other money was for my parents and my siblings. But if you are not in that kind of situation, I would say follow Mavis's advice, apply to other schools where you probably have better chances. Because for Oxford, everywhere that is coming, or 80% of people that are coming have first class. That's the truth. So what are you gonna say more? Especially if they're not asking you if you have the money. So it will happen that some people that have the funding probably are from very rich backgrounds and they don't even need it as much as you do. So if you have a plan B, a plan C, I think you would eventually get in. Elias talked about the fact that, yeah, I applied for a school initially, they gave me half funding and he was ready to pay the remaining half. And he applied for another school again and they actually gave him the admission. So if you don't think on your own part, you'll be able to raise it, And then I think you should apply to 2-3 schools and also put in a lot of energy towards the funding as well. We talked about personal statement, but the truth is that those Shivini scholarship also require a lot of attention. They will ask you about essays, different questions. Even though scholarship has interviews towards it. So you have to put in that same level of energy and effort to make sure that your funding plan works as equally as well as your master's application process.
Thank you, Layet. Tochi, do you have anything to add?
So thank you, Mavis. Very briefly, I'll just add to say that also when we're making the applications, also consider the schools that you can, even after your graduate program, you can still be paying them, right? And a good example is NYU. So in NYU, after your program, you kind of structure a payment plan with the school to say, every month I'm going to pay you certain amount, and you pay it, you continue to make that payment. And I've realized, because I'll use myself as an example, I am still making my payments for NYU. So you have, and NYU is also a good school. It goes to Mavis' advice about having option B. If you want to go to Harvard and you don't get it, you can consider schools like NYU, because even if you're not able to pay everything, after school, you have an arrangement with NYU that you pay them a certain amount every month. And the good thing is that once you start making this payment, interest doesn't accrue on the amount you're owing them. The only thing, which I'm not sure anybody is interested in, is you will not get your diploma until you finish the payment, but you can always access your transcripts. Once you click on the platform, you pay maybe $20 or $30 and you get your original transcript if you want to apply for anything, but you will not get your diploma. So that way you have that flexibility of, I pay them half of what I can get now from my personal savings, from family and friends. Then after school, you have enter into an arrangement with them. Most of my friends from Nigeria that went to NYU also had similar payment structure with NYU, and some of us are still paying up till now, and nobody disturbs you. Your diploma stays with the school until you're done with your payment. Then for scholarship, NYU also has good scholarship options. During my set, we were about 7 Nigerians, and 2 of us got the Dean Scholarship, which is half of the tuition fee. One of us got full scholarship for NYU, which is called the Vanderbilt, which is full tuition. Then one of us got the Hausa Scholarship, which is complete tuition, they give you a stipend at I think about 3,000 or so every month. They take care of your books and everything. So I will also advise for people that are looking into some of these schools to look at NYU, because NYU has good payment structure and also good scholarship opportunities and options. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tochi. Seems like you're advertising a lot at some point. Even then, you're like, what? Okay.
Well,
So
this is funding we're talking about. I felt that I should also mention those options, because I guess people would really, interested in
definitely understand. We are just saying that it just appears to be suspiciously coincidental that NYU has this great package and you are the one talking about it. Thank you very much for that. I think I'll push it forward a little bit and I'll bring Uche into the conversation. My take home from all of this is some schools you don't get the admission easily. Some other schools you get relatively easily. And then those schools too might have good funding opportunities that combined with your desire to study or do your LLM program outside the country, the fact that you can get that funding from those schools will make those schools viable considerations, even though they are not the first tier considerations. Yeah. So Uche, would you like to tell us a little bit more on funding opportunities in Canada now?
Okay, thank you very much for the question. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah, in Canada, Canada is a vantage point.
Okay.
In global terms, everybody considers Canada.
Absolutely. So when it comes to Canada, I think I'm going to focus a lot about on scholarships. So number one is one thing I found, or one thing I learned from my application process, you get more, the chances you have to get scholarship is higher if you're applying for research-based course. So if you're doing like a course like mine is my LLM was your chances of getting funding is pretty much slim. You would get like a base amount similar to what Omole Osinaike got. I got about $2,000 from my school, which is pretty much small. It's reasonable. It's not really, it's significant, but really not significant. But then what happens if you if you want to apply to Canada, and just like me, you do not get substantial amount of funding? So there are third-party funders or third-party organizations that specialize in providing funds for students, and it's really surprising that a lot of people are not aware of them. And thank God for this platform. I'll just address them quickly. The first one is called Empower, and the second is called Prodigy. So these are financial institutions, and what they do essentially is to finance students. So it's called Empower Financing and Prodigy Financing, in case you are interested in them. So the very good thing about these institutions is that they are happy to give you up to maybe 70% of your tuition fees. And guess what? No collateral is required. Can you hear me? Okay, great. And the interesting thing about this funding or these organizations is they do not require any collateral. All you need to provide, or all you need to prove to them is that you have employment at the point in time when you're applying. You have to also provide the referee, and it's best if the referee is somebody who has been a beneficiary of the funds provided by these organizations. They also give particular attention to people who, based on their application, based on their analysis, that they graduate. So that in the event that this fund Canadian school, all else fail, you apply for your scholarship and it's not approved, and you apply for it's nice as and as well consider the Empower and the Prodigy funding.
Hi, Uche, your okay. Uche, your network isn't very good. Tola, can you just help us out a bit? Just talk briefly about funding, and also on the back of that, we know you've been done with your master's for like 5 years now, if I'm not mistaken. I want to know if there has ever been a point where you felt like, no, I shouldn't have done this master's program. Hi, Tola.
Hi, okay, I can hear you. Thank you. So as we're having the discussion, I just wrote down some things which I wanted to type in the chat box, but I think I can go over, and if I have some time, I'll just put in the chat box again. So for funding, which is actually very, very important, please, I think what I would say is, again, looking back now, please don't put yourself under undue pressure. Don't put yourself under due pressure in terms of getting funding for your program. And I will also support what Mavis said, that you should not only look at your option A schools, you should consider some other schools as well. I will use myself as an example. So in UPenn, initially I got Dean Scholarship of $25,000. And whereas when I applied to Cardozo in New York, I got 45 initially. And I made a further push. I asked them for more funding and they gave me an additional 15. So that's 60, right? And school fees was around 80. But because I was hell bent on going to an Ivy League, going to a top school, I decided to go to UPenn. In retrospect now, and I'm being open and very honest, in retrospect, I think I should have probably gone to Cardozo, and that would have taken off the huge burden that was on me while I was in school. And I'm sharing this so that other people that are coming behind us can glean from mistakes of others that have gone ahead. Again, don't put your head there. I must go to Harvard. I must go to UPenn. I must go to Stanford. I must go to Yale. Have some other schools in in your second bucket that you can look into and go to. So having said that, let me just go through some of the ways or some of the platforms or options you can look at when you're looking for funding. So the first will be funding, it will be scholarship. And like we said, it can be need or merit based. Please, any school you're applying to, make sure you check the LLM page and the funding option that you have, the funding page, to be sure what are the options that are available to you. Check the funding page. It is very, very important. I will also commend, if you're applying to US schools, you should please check the LSAC website, which is the Law School Admission Council website. You can get very useful information and material and resources around funding there. The second will be government. And when I say government, if you're Nigerian, of course, you can check maybe the program you're applying for, if you can get funding for federal government, your state government, and probably your local government, if all of the funding there have not gone for projects as we know it. Then the third, I would say personal savings, and which was why earlier we talked about having working a while before you go to school. So let's say you've worked for 2 or 3 years, at least if you're saving some amount every now and then, every month, you're saving towards your program as well. So if you've worked as opposed to right from law school, you're just heading to to graduate school. Like I said, I'm still going to reiterate it. Please don't put yourself under pressure because it has a way of affecting you. You won't be able to concentrate if you're in school. You just be thinking of, oh God, how am I going to pay and all that. However, if you go to US, I doubt if they will throw you out of class. Tochukwu also mentioned there, opportunity for you even after the program to pay. So after I said scholarship, need a merit based. The second is your government, and the third one is personal savings. Then the fourth one I will focus on F and A, which is family and friends. Again, family and friends, if you have people here and there that can contribute or they are dropped to your program. Then the fifth one, which I explored, was your employer. You can actually have maybe like a gift from your employer. If you work in a law firm, for example, you can have, maybe you can choose to sponsor you. However, there can be like a bond for you to work with them for some certain number of years after you return for your program. You can also have gifts from your partners or law firm or your current employer. Again, that means you have goodwill, so which is very important. Work on your relationship so you can leverage on that. And for scholarship, please, when you get, maybe you get scholarship from UPenn. So using myself as an example now, I initially got 25, like I said earlier. Please don't stop there. Write to them. Something about American is don't take no for an answer. Please write that email, explain your situation to them, how you really want to come to that school, but you are financially handicapped. Narrate your story in a convincing manner. We have template that can be shared. Just narrate your story to say, yes, you appreciate this 25,000 grant that you have, but you want more for X, Y, Z reason. And so ask for more money. Even if when you get in, okay, so I'll go deeper into my story now. After I got into UPenn, towards the end of my program was when I got the 2 additional funding that I got. So the first one was the Trustees Council of Penn for Women Scholarship. And I got to know about that funding when I just approached the what we call the bursary department in Nigeria. And I just went, and the lady at the finance desk just told me, have you thought about the scholarship? And that was why I was able to get an additional $10,000. So please ask. Which was the tagline I put there in my flyer. That it's very important that you ask. Please don't close your mouth. Ask questions. Even when they say no, please still go back to them. Be persistent. Keep writing that email. Keep explaining. Yes, you want more. Always ask for more. Ask for more. And when you get into the program, you can also discover that they have other scholarship in place. You can approach the international student community in that area in your school to say, please, I want to find out about funding. Well, who can I approach? Even if it's $2,500, that can cover your feeding or your your day-to-day bills. So please, scholarship need and merit-based, government, personal savings, family and friends, your employee, very important. Please don't put your hair in one basket to say, oh, I must go to UPenn, I must go to this. And please don't put yourself under pressure. You don't want to be in class where you're supposed to be listening to the lectures and you're just thinking of, oh, how am I going to pay my bills and all that. So please just take the best of it and make sure you ask the right questions. Don't take no for an answer, keep knocking. And I wish everyone all the best. So I'll share them in the chat box as well. And some links for those, specifically for those that want to apply to US schools, there is www.aauw.org that you can check, and some other links. So I'll put them in the chat box. Thank you.
Okay, so like one liner, right? Did you ever regret doing your graduate program and also going to UPenn? Just one liner. Did you regret? Did you ever feel bad at some
Not at all, no regrets at all.
So Tola, you will still do a graduate degree if you have the opportunity. Say if you are able to go back in time, you will still choose a graduate degree. Okay. I think we lost Tola there. Tochi, can you please also answer the same question? And was there ever a time in your graduate program where you felt like, you know what, I shouldn't have even done this thing in the first place?
To be frank with you, it's not all rosy, right? There were times I regretted going, well, will I say not going for the graduate program, but maybe leaving Nigeria, because which is why my buzzword is do not let the fear of striking keep you from playing the game. It's not always easy, especially when it comes to funding, when you're not from a very rich background and you have to source these fundings for yourself. So there are times where you wonder if you made the right decision by going for the graduate program. But I would say it's actually worth it. For me, maybe I didn't know it wasn't going to be easy, which is why this is a great discussion to have at this point. I think that every applicant should know from get-go that it's not going to be rosy, except you have all that funding or you have all that cash before going to school. But if not, there are times you will wonder why you made the right decision. But trust me, you will pull through all that. And once you pull through, you will discover and you will realize that going for a graduate program is actually one of the best decisions you can make in your career, because it spurs you and it gives you an edge in your career. And I'll just mention that, just like Tola mentioned, that when she went for the interview in her present job, and one of the interviewers realized that she went to UPenn, and the discussion went in another direction, a favorable direction. Also, in my current job, one of my interviewers also went to NYU, and she did her JD at NYU. And once we realized that we went to the same school, the discussion went to it just took a different turn. It was more of a chat than it was an interview. So except you prepare for it, there might be times that you wonder if you made the right decision. There were times I didn't know. It was so bad that there were times that I didn't know where to stay, and I had to rely on some Nigerians for accommodation. But once you make up your mind that, okay, I've been in this discussion, I know there will be difficulties, but I've made up my mind that I'm going to get into this graduate program. I'm going to be a better person. Trust me, you will realize that it's the best decision you will make. Thank you.
So thank you so much. During the registration process of this program, a lot of people asked some questions. So we're just going to read out those questions, and we also try and look at some questions that have been asked since the beginning. I know someone asked about LSAT, GMA.
Yeah.
and SAT. Those are not applicable with respect to getting an LLM, Masters of Law. GMAT, if you go to the code, the GMAT or the GRE. But there is, for those that are interested in US schools, SAT is also not important. For those that are interested in US school, particularly the law school, there is LSAC. Apart from, I think there are probably just 3 universities, 3 law schools that don't go through the LSAC. I think that's Harvard, Yale, and Stanford, if I'm not mistaken. The other schools usually go through LSAC. And what I would advise everyone that is interested in US schools and want to look at other schools apart from Harvard, Stanford, and Yale, I think even Stanford has started using LSAC. I mean, I can be wrong, it's been a while. Please make sure you send your documents early on to LSAC. LSAC will probably take weeks to review your documents, and they will not start the review process until they have all your documents. Right? I remember for Harvard, we were supposed to make sure all our documents was with Harvard as of December 15th. So I went through LSAT because I also applied to other law schools. So just so you know, I didn't just apply to the top schools. I also applied to my second bucket of school, right? And I used LSAT. And there was some kind of deal. They wanted my diploma transcripts and all of that. As of December, they hadn't even reviewed my documents. And I actually tried to start early. I started early. And I remember speaking to a colleague that we've been talking about the admission process. And he was like, maybe so all your documents have gotten to Harvard. I was like, that was like December 20 something. I was like, no, my documents didn't get to Harvard until the first week of January of the next year. Meanwhile, the deadline is December 15th. They can be lenient when they want to be, but it's not all cases, right? So please plan in advance, particularly if you're going to US schools and you're going to go through LSAC. Make sure you start requesting your transcripts now. Make sure you start the process well in advance. Make sure you get all your documentation there so that you have enough space for LSAC to review and send out your transcripts. That is very important. So I think I've answered that question. One of the questions here says, I'll direct this to Victor. Victor, is it possible to apply to Harvard and secure admission with relatively low work experience? Victor?
Yeah, absolutely, you can. I have classmates who are fresh out of the water, who just finished from the undergrad. Well, I have to warn that all of these classmates are not Nigerians or Africans. So I don't know if there's some dynamic to that. But I think you can, even though on Harvard's website, I think it's advised that what is said is you don't need experience. But then they found that people with 2 or more years experience have a better sense of what their program should look like. So I suspect that they probably would give some more credence to your application if you have some experience. So by all means, get some experience.
Yes, I also think it's possible because they have a percentage. If you look at, for those of you that are probably interested in Harvard, if you look at the website, they give you a breakdown of the different people that makes up a particular class. They will tell you for this year, 2% being had 0 experience, 5% are judges, 20% have 2 years or more experience. These other percent are interested in public international law. You know, they give a breakdown. So there's definitely room for you to go fresh out from school and go straight to Harvard. There's definitely room. I know people that have done 9 months. They did 9 months, just the NYSC phase, and then they went to Harvard. I don't know anyone from Nigeria that has gone from law school, bam, straight to Harvard. I've seen people that went, did only NYSC. I did NYSC in a couple of months, then I went to Harvard. I've seen people that did only NYSC and bam, they went to Harvard. There are not so many people like that. And I've seen people that applied during law school. And I mean, according to them, the reason they didn't get in is because they said they didn't have enough experience. Yeah, so people have been bounced back. They applied during law school and so that they can go after NYSC, and they weren't given admission. And according to them, one of the reasons was that, they didn't have enough experience. So yeah, it's possible, but it's just not very common. And the next question is, Tochi, okay, maybe Tola seems like an expert in funding. It says, how do I secure funding for my resumption in September 2021? So it's not clear whether this person is going to a US school or the person is going to a UK school, or the person is going to a school in Canada or some other European country. But so like, can you just, you know, in a way, I know you mentioned different sources. You mentioned F&F, you mentioned personal savings, you mentioned using the employer route. Can you just elaborate on that again?
Okay,
Just reiterate that.
all right, thank you. So I just listed them in the chat box again. I think an advice I will put out there is that please start as early as you can. Like immediately you start your application, also start thinking about funding. For some of the schools, especially in the US, the decision on your funding can come along with your admission, your offer of admission. However, if that decision is not coming at that time, I would advise that you start well ahead of time so that you can also think of, okay, how do I get funding for this program that I'm about to get admission for? So I just listed the sources in the chat box. You can take a look at those places as well. They are not exhaustive. As I get more, I'll try and share before the end of this program.
Thank you very much, Adetola. I'll be directing this next question to Tochukwu. Minimum grades and scholarships are available for schools in the US. And Uche, maybe you could help us with Canada. What minimum grades? I think students are really very interested in knowing, oh, what grades, what's the minimum I should have to even bother with these things in the first place?
Ichi, can I have 2-2 and still apply?
Exactly. Can I have a 2-2 and still apply? Should I even bother? Something of that nature. So you could please help us with the question.
Okay, so for me, in my experience, I haven't seen, I don't know, but from people I interact with and people I went to NYU with, and people have advised and also did personal statements for that got into NYU and some of these US schools. I haven't come across someone with a 2-2. It's always a first and a 2-1, except someone has a different. This, like I mentioned, these are the people I've had interactions with and people that I know about. I don't know if there are other people, but again, I believe speaking generally, I think you can have a 2-2 and still get this, but at that point, your experience, your work experience will now speak more than your grades. So here it goes back to how many years have you, what's your work experience, number of years, what kind of transactions or activities have you done or deals in line with the course or the program you're applying for. So I wouldn't say there's a straight-jacketed response to it, whether if you have a 2-2, you will never get admission. But I think when you have a 2-2, the admission officers might have to consider other things like your work experience, other activities you've engaged in. But for people I've had interacted with, who are people that maybe did 2 years and get applied on 3 years, I always see a first and a 2-1.
Okay, thank you very much. I think Mavis wants to say something.
Okay, so on whether grades, the minimum grade, I think like Tochi said, I've also not seen anyone that at the minimum gotten into real top schools with a 2. I mean, when I talk about 2, I mean undergrad. I don't mean law school. I mean law school, anybody can have a pass, anybody can have a first class. Anything can happen. But when it comes to the undergraduate studies, they want people that are above average. 2 sounds like average. They want people that are like 60-65%. So 2-1 is around 60-65%. So to be honest, I haven't seen. I would definitely like to meet that person. And even if there are people that have gone, for instance, the school I went to, Harvard, that have 2-2, it could be because they probably now have tons of experience in one specific area that they want to develop, right? But to be honest, I haven't, particularly at early stage of say 5-year post-score, a 2-2 can be a bit of an hindrance. So which is why for those that are still in the university, please. I know we've been talking about so many stuff. Please, your grades matters. Please. We did two. I mean, no matter how fantastic your personal statement is, I mean, I want to know the person that got into Harvard with two. Definitely want to know. But it's a stretch, and it's always very difficult, to be honest. It's always very difficult. And I haven't seen personally.
Yeah, maybe please. Someone just asked the question. Say, what if you had a 2-2 in your uni and then you made the first class at the law school? Would that met anyway?
I don't know though, but I know for UK school, they're more keen on undergrads than school. In short, UK schools probably don't even need your law school set. They can just they don't want to say it. US schools usually ask for law school. Maybe that can, but to be honest, again, like I said, based on my interaction thus far, I haven't. I don't know if any of the panelists have heard of someone that got into Oxford, Cambridge, NYU, Columbia, UPenn, Stanford, Yale with a 2-2. Please let the participant know. But I haven't seen anyone, to be honest. I haven't. Victor, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about it, and like you, I think what is the more common is people have a first class or a very high 2-1 in uni, and then they could even have a pass or a second class lower at law school, and they could still get into Cambridge and get into all the top law schools. I know for sure someone who had a pass at the law school but made a first class at uni. I know two people right now currently at Cambridge. So I don't know that. I think the emphasis is really on your undergrad more than it is on law school. And I guess in order to take care of that problem of bad grades in uni, if you can, there's always a point of your application where you can explain why you did poorly in uni. If you can come up with a very good reason, you fell ill at a particular semester or session, and it was just impossible to come back from it. I'm sure, I find that US schools, or in fact, Americans generally, are very attracted to people who are, if you like, underdogs, people who come back, right? So, and they'll always give you a chance. And that's why I feel like the scholarship process in American schools are way far better than what is obtainable in the UK. UK is a very grade dependent. Or UK is very grade dependent rather. But America is more about your person, like who you are, how you're able to sell yourself to them. If they can see that as someone who is willing to take a chance, I suspect that they would give you an opportunity to show yourself. So you just have to explain yourself why you made a 2-2. If it's good enough, you'll get in.
Thank you very much, Victor. I think your answers, they tend to give some hope to these participants. I'm seeing some messages here on my phone, and
I have to say,
thank you very much.
I'm sorry if I may add, I am probably one of those underdogs who probably thought I had no hope to get to where I am today. So in many ways, I speak from very personal experience when I talk about the possibilities of obtaining in this area. And I didn't get a chance to speak about funding, but maybe I can give a story that probably shed some light, if that's okay. Okay.
All right.
Okay. So when I applied to several, when I applied to several schools, I was waiting for the decision on scholarship for all of the schools, except Harvard. I didn't hear back from Harvard. And of course, Harvard is a gamble. You really don't depend on Harvard admission. You just hope for the best. So and then at the time I'd gotten NYU's admission, but I'd heard about a scholarship program that was being undertaken by the US government at the US Embassy. So I was in Abuja at the time, so I went to the US Embassy to make inquiries. Now, the lady who attended to me, she first confirmed to me that, you see, this scholarship program is true, it's legit, but it's for undergrads, not for postgrads. And then she looked at my NYU letter of admission, and she said to me, but why would you do this to yourself? And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, this is like holding a cherry in your hand and not having the tooth to eat it. And then she says, why would you want to apply to a school like NYU and you don't have money? And for me, I guess that sums up the whole story of admission. I would actually place funding above admission, to be honest. I think for several schools, if you can put up a good application, you will get in. I don't think there's so much difficulty about getting into tops. Well, the dynamics of it, but I don't think there's so much. I think the more difficulty accrues towards getting funding. So you want to really put a lot of emphasis on that. When I applied, I was looking at schools that gave needs-based scholarship. I was even considering merits. It's not like I didn't have merits, on some level. I was more particular. I didn't want to take any chances. So I had schools that I knew that would give me funding if I got in. I had schools I knew that I had to apply for the scholarship. So even if NYU was my first choice, as a matter of fact, Harvard wasn't my choice of school at all. It was when I even spoke to someone, a mentor, who said, you know what, if you get into Harvard, you don't have to worry about funding. That's why I applied. I wasn't very keen on Harvard. I wanted to do international law. NYU is the place for international law in the US. So I was going to NYU. So, but then there was that skepticism. You don't know what happens with NYU. If you don't have a first class, NYU will not give you the Vanderbilt scholarship or the also global scholarship, right? So I applied to other schools as well, like Harvard. NYU gave me $40,000 in scholarship, and I just couldn't. And then I think the overall cost for NYU attendance was about $100,000. So that was a lot of money, right? So in applying to your dream school, have plan B. Or please have a plan B. It's very important. I mean, I know it's Harvard was my plan B. Okay, I know it's weird that Harvard was my plan B, but it actually was my plan B. NYU was my plan A. Because since NYU fell through funding, Harvard was a very good fallback plan. Yes. So thanks. That's what I wanted to say.
Everybody should be like Victor that makes Harvard a plan B. He was busy talking to people that went to Harvard the entire time. I don't mind Victor. Please take one. Yeah, Destiny, please continue.
Thank you very much, Victor. I think I know someone who made Harvard a plan B. That's a lot of flex.
Do you understand?
That is in Harvard.
Okay, I'll
plan B.
It happens to be convenient.
I think it's close to the fact that you can actually work with your plan B. You know when you talk about plan B and plan C.
You understand? Yeah.
Harvard is not an option for me at all.
Why was it?
You know what was interesting, guys? I actually have a mentor who had to choose between NYU, the Alsa Global Scholarship, and about 80% funding at Harvard, and she picked NYU. And I tell you, if I had that kind of scholarship at NYU, I would have been greatly conflicted. Believe me. So I guess the point.
Don't worry, I can assure you wouldn't have picked it because your village.
I think Victor's case is the second scenario here that is suspiciously coincidental.
Okay, I think to ask Ilias.
Yeah. I'll be asking Ilias this question. I think one of the participants wants to know which school you would consider to be the best school for LLM in maritime law in the UK.
Oh, in the UK, I have a friend who is currently, and former colleague who is currently studying LLM in maritime, but is not in the UK. He's in Tulane, which is in the US, right? I have not had the course to check which school is best for maritime law in LLM in the UK. I'm sorry, but I know Tulane in the US.
Well, just to add, okay. I don't know about Swansea. I've never really researched into maritime law, but I know that it happens that the few people that I know that have done that course went to Swansea University. So maybe what the person trying to research how their program is.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Yeah, there's also a school in Nottingham, if I'm not mistaken. Yes. So someone just confirmed, someone that probably went to Tulane.
Tulane, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, so Tola, this question is for you. It says, what are the odds of getting into an Ivy League with a 2.1? I mean, Tola, you got into an Ivy League with a 2.1. Not mistaken, although you're 1%. So yeah. And Victor got into an Ivy League. Victor, you have 2.1 now. I mean, you are.
Victor,
tell us.
I said this kid.
Victor got into an Ivy League with a 2.1. I have so many examples here. Okay, NYU is not an Ivy League, but NYU is a very tough school. So I feel that there's a large division between the thing that the only good schools in America are Ivy League. Ivy League is a group of schools involved in sport activities, and it happens that they actually do well. But there are other schools that are not Ivy League that are equally very tough, like NYU, Stanford. Those are not Ivy League, but they are very, very tough as well. And Tochi had a 2-1 as well, but Tochi is also a 1%, so that's a bit confusing. But Ola, maybe the person is asking a vanilla 2-1, 2-1, 2-1,
Yeah.
just 2-1 like that, Can they get into UPenn, Cornell, Columbia?
Okay.
Harvard and
Yeah, I know there's something we say in Nigeria that 2-1 is 2-1, right? Everybody, okay, so 2-1 is 2-1. But there's a reason why in the US, they want to see your transcript. And the reason why they want to see your transcript is to see where you actually fall to, like indicator of things when they are looking at it. So if you have a 2-1, so let's say on the grade of 1.0 to 5.0, you're around 3.5 to like 3.9. Yeah, 3.5 to 3.9, what we'll call, yeah, just like 2-1. Okay, let me put it at 3.8 because I think 3.8 to 4.4 is actually what I'll call strong 2-1. With that, I believe you may be able to get to an Ivy League school coupled with a very good, fantastic personal statement and some other things you are putting into your application. But what I think will get you really into all of this that will is very strong 2-1, something above the threshold of 3.8 upward to like 4.4. I think that's very good, but not to discourage people. I think the aim is not to discourage people that are not there. Anywhere you are, please, like we said, all these schools we have mentioned, they are very good, but please always have a plan B and all will be well, not to discourage anyone at all. If you are currently not, if you currently don't have that degree, or you are not in that class, whatever you have, please package it very well and give it.
Yeah, so just to add to what Tola said, so if your Tola seems to, it looks like 2 classes now, right? So if your 2-1 is between 3.5 to 3.8, and you think that you're competing with people with first class, with 2-1 plus everything, so make sure you have all of these extra stuff that can actually boost your resume and your personal statements. Like you're very involved in extracurricular activities, your work experience, very strategic about it. It's not like you're doing capital market and suddenly you want to do energy law. So that's a bit confusing. But if you're very intentional, you've been grooming yourself, you're a capital market lawyer, you've had like lots of experience in it. You've probably done 1 or 2 articles with respect to capital market. And then you have this 2-1, definitely, they will definitely look, you probably even score higher than the person with the first class, So I just feel like have your 2-1, but also have extra because there are lots of people, as you would know, with 2-1. Leia, what do you have to say about this as well?
Having 2-1, well, in my own case, I had 2-1, 2-1 in both instances, both from Unilag and law school. But I happened to be like top 3, so that was one of the things I said in my application to be able to tell myself that, yeah, though I had 2-1, I was still top and I was able to make it. But Victor made, or I think it was you, maybe, that made a point about maybe law school not really, not going to matter so much. And well, in my own case, well, for Oxford, I didn't even bother to put in my Oxford transcript. And that was because I was more familiar with the transcript process in Unilag. I had contacts I could follow up with, but with law school, I didn't have that contact. And I didn't want to then say I had law school degree and then now waiting so long for that evidence to prove it. So I didn't even bother to mention my law school. I just put in my Unilag and then talked about my other certifications that I had done, because at that time, I had done exam as well. So I just spoke about my other certifications and things that I could easily control within myself. But then if for any reason you think maybe you have a first class in law school, maybe because you think you have a 2-2 in undergrad, or you had a 2-1 in law school, then by all means, bring that in. All the things I could just say from all these factors we're talking about is the fact that you need to be able to position yourself to be a viable candidate. Someone talk about being the cake yourself, and so that they can add an icing towards it. So yeah, if you think you have a very good grade from law school that would help you to put yourself in a better position, by all means, please have that. But yeah, if you have a 2-2, there are many universities, even in this UK, that accept a pass. They will just even require you to do a pre-masters before having a master's degree. And I'm not talking out of place. I actually know somebody that had a pass, or I think a third class actually from university in Nigeria. And the person, I don't want to call them now, so they don't feel like maybe they accept passes, but yeah, the person did a pre-master's and then did a full master's. So yeah, if you truly desire a graduate school and you don't have that specified degree, look wider, broaden your search. You know, people think, for example, when I was applying to, sorry, I'm talking for too long. When I was applying to Oxford and somebody happened to see me in the office, we said like, oh, you want to apply to Oxford? I don't remember that once also that had a 2-1. Did you have a first class? And in my mind, I'm like, hey, if you don't know anybody, you will know in my own time now. And that's how it made me feel like, and because if you go to Oxford website and things like Cambridge, they will not exactly tell you first class. They will tell you they want top 5%. And by Nigerian mathematics, if you do that calculation, top 5% can even be maybe 20th position in the class, because we are over a class of 200 in Nigeria. So it boils down to your research. Research the schools you are interested in, research their requirements, and don't doubt yourself. Just because everybody you have known has had a first class or had a 2-1 doesn't mean you can't make it into it. I know for a fact that there are some UK schools that accept third class from Nigeria. You just need to do a pre-master's and then do a master's program. Yeah.
Thank you, Omoleye. Sadly, I think we've answered all the questions, and we just want each of our panelists to give us, a parting word, just one word to wrap this whole process up. I think we started with Tochi, so let's also end. Tochi, let's start with you again.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Destiny. Thank you, Levis. Thank you. I'm getting some feedback. Okay. So what I would say is this is a wonderful conversation that we've had, but notwithstanding all that we've said here, the intention is not to discourage anybody. I'll just speak basically on the last issue. The fact that you have a 2-2 or a 2-1 will not still stop you from making these applications. We never know, something can happen. Like Mavis said, you could be among the 1% with a 2-1 that gets into Harvard. I know someone that has a 2-1 and got to Harvard. So just, again, I'll go back to my buzzword. Don't let the fear of striking keep you from playing the game. Do what you need to do, make these applications, whether you have a 2-1 or a first class or a 2-2, and you think you don't have relationships with your lecturers, there were several advices or several options I would provide for how you can surmount that challenge, and just make the application, keep to it, keep to whatever you need to do, and trust me, at the end, you will come and you say, I had a 2-2 and I made this application and I succeeded. Just keep to whatever you're doing and you will be very all right. Thank you.
Thank you, Tochi. Adetola.
All right. Okay, I think I'll just end here by saying, please go ahead and ask necessary questions when you are not sure. Reach out, check resources online, ask people that have gone ahead, so you're sure you're not making the same mistake that we made. Please ask questions. And like I said, I'm very key on this funding. Don't put yourself under undue pressure, and you don't want to be in school and be distracted. Just make sure you ask the necessary questions from people. And I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Omoleye.
Well, my last words would be to believe in yourself and put in your best. You will never know if you can get in except you try. Like every other thing you do, just do your own part and hope for the very best. You can make it. Everybody has a story to tell. You may think that, oh, what would I say? I don't know what to do about my personal statement, but you just need the time to plan, be strategic about it, like people have, like we've all advised here, and I really believe that you can make it, and just put in best efforts for funding. Try everything you can do, put in those applications, put in those essays, reach out, in Nigeria, we tend to believe that, oh, let me keep it within my family members so that they don't hear about it. But sometimes if you don't reach out beyond that, your small and inner circle and your family members, you never really know. In my family, I don't have any lawyers. I don't have anybody to really advise me and put me through. And I wouldn't really say I have mentors that are older. Maybe talking about having friends and people on your level. I happened to join BNI with some very strong forces at that time. Ilias and Uche were my mates then. Even mates was still in BNI by the time I joined. So from this little support, I was able to pull out. Now these days, when you go on LinkedIn, you see all of these very good things and it can be very intimidating. Don't feel intimidated. Within that your small circle, there are people that can actually really help you. Don't always feel the need to reach out to that managing partner in that law firm for help or something. So make use of your small network and really believe in yourself and do your best into making a good application.
Thank you so much, Omoleye. Please, everyone around you is important. Everyone around you, I mean, of course, be thoughtful about it, thinking through, but reach out to as many people as you can. Yeah.
May I add one more thing?
Omoleye,
yeah, you mentioned a point, and I thought it was important to mention it. You mentioned a point about reaching out to everyone around you, and I want to say this right. In my application to Oxford, I would say it started of about 8 people read my application, and by 8, I wasn't focused on lawyers alone. I gave my application to my sister Lushola and to my best friend then, and I deliberated. They were non-lawyers. One was an IT person, one was an engineer, and I wanted to see the mind of, if they read it, how would they perceive the application? Because I looked at this, right? In my Oxford application, there was a written work, which was the legal writing, and there was a personal statement. And I thought, and I just assumed, I don't know, I thought the written work would be read by a professor in the law faculty, and then the personal statement would be read maybe by an admissions officer. So I deliberately gave my applications to people that were non-lawyers, people that were not so legally minded. Sometimes you assume as lawyers that everybody understands you. And the feedback they gave me was really helpful. And I remember my staff was complaining about my staff was like, hey, sometimes you write too long sentences. British people don't speak like this. It's too long, break it down. And you'll be surprised as tiny as those feedback is, they're very helpful. For my legal essay, I'm sure I wrote about 6 people. When I wrote it, initially I gave it to the next associate on my level then on my team to read it. When he gave me a feedback, I went to meet another associate that was like 5 years my senior to look at it. More like I begged them, and I told him something like, if you have work, if you have research, you come and give me. So please, you have to also help me. It's a give and take. If not, next time you needed help. And I joked around it, and it took me like 2 weeks to pursue him and chase him on a Sunday, and he gave me feedback. And when he gave me that feedback, I gave it to my next seatmate then in BNI. The person doesn't the person will have experience, but the person was able to help me with checking that there are no typos, there are nothing. So yeah, just all about reaching out. Don't underestimate anybody around you to look at your application essays, and all the very best.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Omole I call her practical mama. Okay, Ilias.
Okay, so I want to say that you should approach your application as a project, be committed to it and very strategic. If you know that only option A works for you, stick to the option and be deliberate about it. There's nothing stopping you from having option B if you consider that useful. Option B, C, D, whatever it is. Just make sure that you are strategic and you're deliberate about what you do, and you will be successful. So be positive about it. Don't feel intimidated by anything, like Omoleye said. And don't think if you applied for the first time and it doesn't work, that's the end of the road. No, you can see that everybody has a story to tell. Some people applied twice, some people applied 3 times, and all of that. Just make sure again that if you've applied once and it doesn't work, make sure that you're doing something presently now that will still count towards that application next year, because you are able to then account for your time as to what you've been doing over the couple of years before you apply for the application. All the very best.
Thank you so much, Ilias.
I think Victor.
Yes, Victor.
Our purveyor of hope.
Yes, our plan B.
Thank you, really, organizers, for this opportunity. I really wanted to say something very, very cliche, but I will just try to speak to you guys from my heart. And I, first of all, I would say be very deliberate about your life and what you're trying to do. As it cannot get earlier from your first year, from your second year, whatever point you are right now in the university or post grad. Be very deliberate. Know exactly. I know you may not know exactly what you want to do with your life, but have a fair idea. The world is not waiting for you to figure your life out. Eh, You are getting you are getting older, and I have to say, and I'm not trying to pressure you, but I'm telling you that you don't want to look back a couple of years back and say, oh, I wish I did this, or I wish I did that. So if there are things, and I know there was a question on the chat where someone was asking, what can she do or what can he do for opportunities in international law before, prior to grad school? There's a whole lot. There are fellowships, there are writing opportunities, there are editorial opportunities, there's conferences, there's networking. There's a whole lot you must begin to do with your life right now so that you know exactly what you're trying to achieve. Now, when you get to that point where you know what you're trying to achieve, then you focus all of your energy on that path. I know exactly what it means like to not get the grades you want. I finished from law school with a second class lower. And what did that mean? I had four A's and a B, and I was so devastated. To my mind, I had planned my life from my fourth year that I was going to work in the top law firm, and I was going to go to the top law school for my master's, and I was going to major in international law. Now, and I was going to make a first class in law school. And then the first major heartbreak was first class in law school, where I had a second class lower instead. And I thought, in fact, I don't think I ate for like 2 days because I thought, no, there's no way. Maybe 2 days, no, that's an exaggeration. Maybe one day and a half. I ate the next day night because I couldn't believe my result at law school. And so I thought, wow, there's no way I can get a top law firm job. There's no way I can go to a top law school. And for me, top law school was NYU. I wasn't even thinking about Harvard. I'm telling you guys here, I'm being very vulnerable. I'm very real with you. I wasn't thinking about Cambridge or Oxford. All I wanted to go to do was to go to NYU and leading university. And I thought with a second class lower, there was no way. But here I am today. I got into BNI. I got into Harvard. And without doing anything more than, I don't know, maybe not ordinarily, but I didn't do anything more than you can do. That's what I'm trying to say. And I have to piggyback on what Mavis said when she mentioned those great scriptural words about in the multitude of counsel, there's safety. Talk to people who are going to where you are trying to get to. Talk to people who have been where you are trying to go to. And be as vulnerable as you can be. I think Leia has also hammered on this fact. Talk to a lot of people. Do not hide your dreams. Do not hide what you're trying to look for. And you will get there. It's going to take some. And Elias also mentioned that you may fail. Be very open to failing. I remember going back to Uniben to talk to the students at the point, and then I met some students preparing for a moots, and I remember asking the students, "So what if you lose?" And then the lady, I think 200 level lady, was like, "God forbid, we will win in Jesus' name." Okay, and I just prepared to fail also, and I think that's something that we have to learn consciously. There are times when you're going to fail, when you won't meet the expectations, but because you know where you're trying to get to, okay, it will be easier for you to focus your energies and get your dreams to accomplishment. So thank you, and I wish you guys all the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, unfortunately, Uche had to drop off at some point, but definitely you guys, Uche is she's in Canada, so you can reach out to her on LinkedIn, any of the social media platform, ask her all the questions that you need. She's very happy and available to answer all your questions. And I'm very happy with the panelists. And while we're walking through the panelists, there were a couple of people we reached out to, and I was very deliberate about the people I bring on board. I wanted people that can share their own perspective. I wanted people that are going to be vulnerable. I wanted people that are going to be very sincere. And I didn't also want people that would appear too intimidating, to like, I don't have this, which is why I don't even want to do a lot of the speaking. I'm not the best graduating from law school, so there's no hope. So there is Victor, for instance. Victor just told you that he had 2-2 from law school, but I mean, Victor has Harvard as plan B, has something, and these are people that have actually inspired me. Tochi did his master before I did. Myself and Tola, we did applications together. Leia did the applications after mine. So I kind of like, have a feel of everyone's story. Everyone had a feel of my story. So we're very deliberate. And then we also have parts where we're bringing in other panelists to share after masters, what happened? What do you want to do after masters? What are the things you're looking at? I know there are a lot of questions about that, and we didn't address questions because we know for the part 2, we are going to try and also address it. We want to thank the panelists, Tochukwu, Omoleye, Adetola, Victor, Uche, Ilias. It's just been so amazing hearing you. I probably heard the stories before, but hearing it again is so refreshing, it's so amazing. It gives everyone a perspective. I heard one of the panelists just told me and said, oh, maybe I'm even learning from this. This is someone that already has a graduate degree saying, oh, I'm learning from it. So I am hoping that we've been able to answer some of your questions around the application, around funding, around grades, around activities and all of that. And if you do have subsequent questions, please feel free to reach out to any of the panelists via social media platform. They were genuinely excited about this opportunity. There was never a time where they said, oh, I don't think I can do it. No, they were so excited. And it was just over a WhatsApp chat, like, oh, what's up? Can you do this? And they were like, yeah, we can do this. So they would definitely be happy to hear your feedback and some of the questions you have, but I would implore that everyone should be reasonable about it, when you're asking your questions, and be mindful that they also have other engagements. So maybe don't expect ASAP responses. Maybe they will take their time to respond. And also, if there are areas that have been addressed in this seminar, maybe go back and listen to it instead of belaboring the points, so that our panelists, don't get too irritated. We hope they won't anyway. I want to say, my Destiny and I want to say a very big thank you to BNI for giving us this platform. It's a stretch. We had reached out to our CEO and she said, yeah, we don't mind. We're a bit surprised, but came through for us. They supported. They gave us a platform. And we haven't been cut off. Imagine if we had to, myself and Destiny had to do this, would have been dialing in and out every 40 minutes.
I've interrupted my power.
So like, the power is stable and everything. So really want to thank Naya as well. And, thank everyone. Destiny?
Yeah, thank you so much. I think there's a lot of hope and promise from just listening to you guys. And I think one of the things I value most personally is perspective. I feel always that there's someone out there that has something to say that could just change your life. I have that strong belief. And listening to all that you have said, I'm very confident that a lot of persons will leave here knowing that, okay, if I do A, B, C, at least there is some piece to these things. This is a perspective I've been exposed to, and I believe I can make something out of it. So thanks to everybody that joined this session. Thanks specifically to the panelists. You guys have done so much for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Right.
you.
Thank you,
And that is the end of our.
If it says add anybody on LinkedIn,
All right. Bye.
to drop a note that you attended this session so that Mavis knows that this is why you are adding just a personal touch to your invitation. And I'm glad.
And we welcome feedback. Yes, thank you, Leigh. And we also welcome feedback. You can give us feedback on social media. Oh, you guys addressed this, you didn't address. If you have questions, please ask and give us feedback as well, particularly for part 2. And as we did with part 1, we want to know what you would like to hear from the panelists that will be in part 2. So please give us feedback, drop feedback to us, drop feedback to the panelists. So thank you. And they will definitely appreciate that, and we will appreciate that as well. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Hopefully
Right,
we'll see you guys.
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye.